The Gladstone City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. Recognized representatives of the news media and council-authorized staff members may attend the executive session. All other persons must leave the room and are respectfully requested to do so now. Members of the media are specifically directed not to report on the topics discussed and the deliberations that occur during the executive session. City councilors are similarly reminded not to discuss executive session topics and deliberations with any third party. This includes, without limitation, family members, other appointed officials, for example, planning commission members, library board members, etc., city staff and volunteers, members of the public, and members of the media. The presence of the media while the city's legal counsel is discussing matters with the council is not intended to, nor does it waive the attorney-client privilege that attaches to those communications and any related documentation. If a final decision on any matter is necessary, the council will make that decision when it is in a regular session. Thank you very much. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Huckabee.
Present.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes.
Counselor Reichel.
Present.
Counselor Roberts.
Present.
Counselor Garlington.
Here.
Mayor Milch.
Present.
I'm going to stop the recording.
I call to order the Gladstone City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 14th, 2023 at 6:33 p.m. I apologize for the late start. We had an executive session earlier to consider information that are exempt by law from public inspection, and I apologize for your delay in getting in here. I want to begin by gratefully acknowledging the Clackamas, Chinook, and Kalapuya Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather this evening. I want to recognize and affirm their accomplishments as the native stewards of these lands, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. Without a full representation of everyone's experience, we will never be able to design and develop a better future. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body, to the extent reasonably possible, to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of the general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to the extent in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting will be open to the public, both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. The Zoom access instructions can be found on the meeting agenda. Members of the City Council, staff, and the public all have access to this call. Public comments requests were accepted prior to noon today and were to include your topic and phone number. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in this process. We will have you muted until it is your time to speak. If we are not able to mute you, please do so on your end. Attendees will still be able to speak for 3 minutes during business from the audience or during agenda items if they submitted their request to speak before noon today. Additionally, if anyone becomes disruptive, we will mute and remove them from the video conference. If that fails to stop the disruption, we will recess the meeting and return within 5 minutes. If we are unable to continue, the City Council will briefly meet off-air to move unfinished business to the next agenda. Tonight, we will start with the consent agenda, which includes approval of February 14, 2023 regular minutes, approval of January bank balances, budget report for period ending 1/31/2023, approval of January check register, legal costs of projects January 2023, and department head monthly reports for February 2023. The topics of our regular meeting agenda include our regular report from Clackamas Fire District Number 1, a public hearing, file text 2022-02, ordinance 1517, approving text amendments to Gladstone Municipal Code Title 17 and adding the new downtown overlay district. Item 9, 2022 City of Gladstone Annual Report. Then we have business carry forward, and we have an additional item added to the agenda tonight, an interview with an applicant for the open position on the city council. Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Huckabee,
Present.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Present.
Counselor Roberts,
Present.
Counselor Garlington,
Here.
Mayor Milch.
Present. Let us stand for the flag salute, please. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tammy, our screens are still off. Thank you. All right, I begin by asking if there are any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight.
I have nothing. Thank you.
All right. First item is the consent agenda. We have 6 items on the agenda, consent agenda printed in your printed agenda. Would anyone like to move for action on the consent agenda tonight?
I have an item I'd like to pull, please.
Yes, Councilor Huckabee.
The approval of the 2014 regular minutes I'd like to discuss.
All right, we will discuss approval of the 2014 of the February 14th minutes. Go ahead, Councilor.
I noticed in my review of the minutes, at the beginning of our meetings now, you are doing an acknowledgement, and also in February, there was a Black History Month acknowledgement, and these are not in the minutes for last month. I think these are important to our community members, and they're happy we're doing them now. So I would like them added.
All right. Any discussion? I look back through minutes from previous years, actually decades. There was a time when we referenced the fact that we began the meeting with the flag salute. There was a point at which that was no longer mentioned. But I think a simple statement just stating that Mayor Milch opened the meeting with a land acknowledgement of Native peoples. And if we make other similar announcements at the beginning, we don't have to go deep into the content, but would councilors be open to having that kind of a statement to amend the minutes?
I would.
I have no objection.
Okay, let's see then if we can get a simple statement recognizing that that was done, added to the minutes. And okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So we need a motion then for approval of the consent agenda as amended.
I have one question.
Yes,
There was a report on the police department that I believe had an error in it. Is that ours to correct or no?
I would suggest first you pull it from the consent agenda if you want to talk about it.
Okay.
If you want to pull the police department, you can do that, just like Counselor Huckabee pulled the
Okay,
minutes.
well, I recommend that we pull the police department report.
all right, I'll allow that. Do you have a particular item you'd like to address?
Yeah, it was just that, oh gosh, and here I turned my page. My apologies. It was the report about the Iowa thing. And it seemed like there was a couple of typos in it, but did that not, was that kind of a cut and paste and didn't come from us anyway?
Yeah, that was a
Okay.
cut and paste.
Then I just bypass that.
Well, I thought that I had the same concern right here where it says, where the age of consent
What
is
page are you on? Cause here, not.
6-9.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I know it came from Iowa or whatever, but it doesn't look too good for Oregon where it says, Spidell took the child to Washington where the age of consent is 16, younger than the age of 2 consent in Oregon. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what, is that supposed to be 20 or
No.
what's that look like? I mean,
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what the laws are in the state of Washington. I'm only familiar with the laws of Oregon. And I know we had some issues when we dealt with this investigation with some of those laws and rules. But then, of course, it went back to the to the Midwest is where our investigator helped proceed with the prosecution of that individual.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
Well,
I don't know that, I don't know that I can.
Well, okay, because it just says the age of age of consent in Oregon. That doesn't, I don't know who all gets this.
No,
report.
the laws are different. The age groups are different when it comes to certain things, depending on what criminal offense is going on, depending on the age. So there's different levels of sexual abuses, so to speak. Same with rape and everything else. So there's a lot of, we'd have to look up the ORSs and I'd have to explain it to you.
Okay,
All right.
clearly that's a typographical error.
Yes.
The number 2 digit has no meaning in that sentence.
No, it does
So,
not.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So that again is something that I thank you for pointing out that error in case it was misleading to anyone.
Then I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes,
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the consent agenda is approved as amended. As always, I commend to you the department reports. This is one of the places where you find out the most detail about what's going on in the city, the fine work that our staff is doing, and in particular, the report that it was referenced about the incident involving a criminal from Iowa being arrested here in Gladstone. It's important for you to know about that. Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for your department and all of our departments.
Mayor,
Yes,
before you move on, technically, since 2 items were pulled from the consent agenda, each of those items needs to be voted on separately. So you need 2 more votes to approve the minutes and then to approve the department head report.
all right, we'll do that. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 14th meeting as with the added sentence that was suggested to be added tonight?
So moved.
second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Counselor Huckabee and Counselor Alexander respectively. Will you call the roll, please, Tammy?
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes,
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the minutes are passed. And regarding the departmental reports, is there a motion to approve the department head monthly reports for February 2023 with the correction noted?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved by Counselor Roberts, seconded by Counselor Alexander. Roll call, please.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes,
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington.
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the report has been approved. Thank you, Chad, for keeping us on our toes. All right. Is there any correspondence to be reported?
I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I know there is some that's included in the report on an agenda item later, so just to clarify that. The next item on our agenda, item number 7, of the report from Clackamas Fire District number 1. Good evening, and I think you know the button rule. There you go. Okay, very good.
So I don't need to keep holding it down. I can just press it. And it'll, okay, got it. Thanks for having me again. Second time here. Just kind of standing in for Chief Stewart tonight. He had a prior engagement involving family. It's my understanding that you received Fire Chief Brown's monthly report. It's something that's being sent. Okay, so I don't need to necessarily go over that. You guys can read that at your pleasure. We do have our Gladstone Fire Report that shows that your community fire engine out of the station here, we call engine 322, ran 117 calls for service. in the Gladstone area. And then in addition to that, there was over 100 calls just in the neighboring, what we call planning zones, right? The other neighboring fire stations. When the call volume is such that those apparatus are too busy, then we provide, support to those communities as well. It's been busy. We're still putting the station together. We're still getting things tip top. And I heard from Chief Stewart today that we're planning an open house for the end of May. It was something I think that came up in a meeting that you all may have attended, or there's a steering committee that's made up from some of the council members there. So we're getting excited for that. We have a few other open houses throughout the district, getting ready for springtime. Yeah, that's it.
And I'm sorry, can you please state your name for the record?
Sorry, my name is Captain Craig Bowen.
Thank you.
You got it.
Pardon me. Thank you, Captain Bowen. Are there any questions from council members on this report?
I just have one thing. So 3 weeks ago on a Saturday night, the Garlington family was having dinner, and we had an unfortunate experience down at a restaurant near Fred Meyer's in Oak Grove. And the crazy wife and the husband, who needed help, was helped by Clackamas Fire. Some very nice people came in, calmed my nerves, helped my husband, and I'm happy to report that we are all okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you hear anything down the grapevine, I'm fine now.
Awesome.
So thank you for being there.
Yeah.
We have made a really good decision, Gladstone.
Yeah, thank you for the accolade. I did want to add, Chief Stewart did mention that you council members were gracious enough to write a letter to the community of Sandy, or at least their fire board, kind of expressing your pleasure with the agreement to date. And so thank you. Yeah, I think the district as a whole, and I know the fire chief definitely would, appreciate. We all love to hear that, when you're doing a good job, or when you've kind of accomplished a mission, or the things that you've set in motion, or the paying dividends, not in a letter, but more that, you're able to show up for work for the day, and that you're able to make a difference, whether it's a small one on a single call, or, more globally for the whole community. So thank you for allowing us to continue to serve you. That's why we come to work every day. So thank you.
And full disclosure, we as a council signed that letter. We have to give credit to staff where credit is due for preparing it on our behalf. But we certainly concurred with the sentiments of that letter and are glad that the city of Sandy will be benefiting from your service the way we have. So
Awesome,
we
yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you so much for your report, Captain.
Thank you. And we'll see you next month.
The next item is a hearing. It involves a public hearing for which I have a script to read, and I will do that. And I appreciate our legal staff for providing the wording of this so that we cross all the Ts and dot all the Is on the things that we need to do for a public hearing where we're making new law in land use. So the public hearing on file number TXT 2022-02 is called to order. The proposed amendments that we're going to be talking about tonight would be the amendments to Title 17 of the Gladstone Municipal Code to implement the city's vision for the Portland Avenue corridor in the downtown core. The recommended code amendments include updates to chapters 17.08 zoning districts generally, and 17.18 the C2 zoning district, and a new chapter 17.21 titled DC Downtown Core Overlay District. Here's the conduct of the hearing of this type. The order of business we will follow in conducting this hearing will be presentation of staff report, entry of correspondence into the record, public testimony, additional staff comments, questions from the commission. In this case, it's present questions from the council, since this is the city council taking this action tonight on recommendation from the planning commission. Then we will close the hearing with allowing no further testimony from the audience. The council will make a discussion and a decision. Let's see. Chad, would you prefer that I go ahead and describe the testimony rules before we get the staff report, or
Yeah, you should read it all now.
I'll do it all now then. Here are the rules regarding testimony. Any interested person may present testimony concerning the proposed amendments. The public hearing is your opportunity to comment on the proposal before the city makes a decision. We want to hear what you have to say, and we want you to give us your point of view. Help us to understand why you have drawn your conclusion and how it relates to the proposal. Public testimony for this hearing will be called for in 3 groups: testimony in favor of the proposal, testimony opposed to the proposal, and neutral testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the city recorder. That's Tammy Bannock seated up here. And the testimony forms are the yellow cards that were in the back of the room. We went through a long period of COVID where we weren't doing things the way we did. But those of you who were around when we were in the old building in which we had our last city council meeting 3 years ago this week, will remember the procedure and the card. I will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through me. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be taped. If you are participating online, click the raise hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you are participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. At this time, I would like to ask members of the City Council if they are abstaining from this matter or need to declare any conflicts of interest. And if you are, please indicate the nature of the conflict of interest and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. So I will start with Councilor Huckabee.
None.
Nope.
No conflict.
No conflict.
Councilor Reichel?
No conflict.
All right, and I have none as well and plan to participate. So the city staff will now present the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. This has been an incredible journey to get to this point tonight, and I'd like to thank members of the Planning Commission and the efforts that they've put into this for almost the last year and a half. So we are going to have a staff report from Heather Austin with 3J Consulting. We're also going to have a presentation from John Phoenix with MIG, and we also have the John Southgate in the audience here to address any questions. So we'll go ahead and start with Heather.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor Milch and members of the council. It's nice to be here with you this evening. I started working with the city officially at the beginning of this year. So it's nice to be here for my first council meeting with you. I've gotten to get to know your planning commission over the last few months, and I'm sure I will see you again soon. This evening, your packet includes a staff report in the standard city council format that introduces the ordinance, provides the history and background, and provides the council with some options as well as a recommendation from the staff. After that is the more detailed staff report that includes the findings that we are required to meet in order to adopt a comprehensive plan amendment. These include local, regional, and state regulations that we're subject to when we're changing anything related to our comprehensive plan, which Title 17 is our development code, and that is part of our comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission recommendation comes next. Your Planning Commission has had 2 opportunities to review the proposed materials with some slight changes in between. So they did forward their recommendation of approval of the amendments this evening. And then finally, the text of Ordinance 1517 with the attachments, and the attachments are the proposed code language. So you have the 2 chapters that are proposed for changing your zoning districts generally, your C2 zoning district, and then, as the mayor said, your new downtown core overlay district zoning. As for the specific details of the project, we're joined this evening by John Phoenix and Keegan Gulick of MIG. They're here remotely and they have a presentation for you. So I will hand it over to them.
All right, John, welcome. Just before you begin, I'd like to, at the request of one of our councilors, recognize the members of the Planning Commission who are here tonight with us also, since they did a lot of the work on this. Our chair, Natalie Smith, is in the room. Pat Smith, another Planning Commissioner. And I can't see everyone. Are there other planning commissioners present in the room tonight? No. Thank you too for being here. All right, John, we'll call on you for your presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you. And hopefully you're seeing a presentation on the screen. Good evening, everyone, members of the council and public. Very honored to be here tonight. My name is John Phoenix. I'm a planner and principal with MIG. We're a consulting firm in Portland, Oregon. And we've had the honor of working alongside city staff and the city in developing over this past year, 2022 into 2023, these proposed amendments to the zoning code. So tonight I have a relatively brief presentation just to provide some information on the background, where have we been with this project, why, what's the purpose behind this, a little bit more about what went into developing the code amendments, and then just some brief highlights of the zoning code chapters themselves, the C2 zoning district and the proposed downtown core overlay district. So the purpose of this project and these amendments, I have kind of four reasons why. The first is harking back to 2017 when the city of Gladstone adopted a plan for the downtown area. And so this is specifically part of the recommendations from that plan to implement specific recommendations for land use, design standards, and other considerations for downtown. The purpose is also to meet ever-growing housing needs in Gladstone by providing more opportunities and housing choice. And then there are a variety of recent statewide rules that apply in Gladstone as well. So we're taking this as a chance to update sections of the zoning code for compliance with state rules. And then last, but probably most importantly, is the opportunity to involve the community and obviously decision makers in understanding potential changes. So the process I've got shown here, if we think about all the way back to 2017, and perhaps even before then, when the city was really considering creating a vision for downtown. So the genesis is really the 2017 Downtown Revitalization Plan, and I'll talk more about that here in a second. We came in about a year ago, spring of 2022, and took a hard look at what the Downtown Revitalization Plan recommended. You can see we've worked with Planning Commission, as Heather mentioned. We had a work session in summer of 2022, and then 2 public hearings, one this past fall and then another this winter. We had a community open house last summer to show some potential changes, but really an opportunity to hear about concerns, other opportunities we might want to consider for those amendments. So here we are in March of 2023, having recently completed the Planning Commission public hearing with a recommendation for City Council. So just a couple of images from the adopted Downtown Revitalization Plan. In this one, really important, showing a bird's eye view of the downtown area. So you can see the highlight here of Portland Avenue really being the major spine that is part of that downtown vision. And then a few different things as part of this future vision. A downtown core area, streetscape improvements, greater mixture of uses, more housing. So all of these are part of that broader vision. But from that plan were specific recommendations for zoning. What needs to happen to make this occur, to encourage the desired type of development for this walkable mixed use environment in downtown. So some specific strategies that come out of that plan. The first, specifically a recommendation to create a downtown overlay zone that could require more specific standards, design requirements for this smaller core area. Reduction of off-street parking requirements. That was another major recommendation. Permitting different housing types, prohibiting new single-family detached housing. So envisioning really more housing options, denser urban living. Maintaining existing height limit, and then clarifying and strengthening design standards, as I mentioned. So just a kind of a snapshot of the open house we had last summer. but really a good opportunity and actually a decent turnout. Local residents, property owners, business owners interested in hearing what this was all about. So we did have an opportunity to both provide some education on what the city was intending on doing with the zoning code update, but also to hear about community members and what they would like to see. Then just this past summer, many of you might have heard of the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities rulemaking. This took place in July of 2022. And I have shown here just some of the highlighted objectives of that rulemaking at the statewide level. First and foremost, helping to meet pollution reduction targets, supporting quality housing and employment, providing transportation choices, and really making downtowns the center of living. So having that work-life balance and making sure that's taking place in an area that's compact with great access to transit, great biking and walking infrastructure, and a mixture of uses. From that, just recently in December 31st, 2022, so just before the beginning of the new year, some more specific rules came out from this equitable communities, climate-friendly equitable communities. And those are shown here. And these are really abbreviated for clarity about the purposes of updating Gladstone zoning code. So the first is reducing parking mandates for some residential uses, and that's specifically around residential middle housing rules. The second is removing parking mandates when development is near transit. And specifically, the rules call for development within about a half mile of frequent transit corridors. In this case, McLaughlin 99 is considered a frequent transit corridor. So to clarify, parking mandates means removing any parking minimums. So let's dive into the first chapter where there's some proposed amendments. This is the C2 zoning district. And to kind of back up at the 10,000 foot level, there are really 4 pockets of zoning with the C2 zoning designation in Gladstone. Those are shown here. So the one that we're focusing in on tonight is along Portland Avenue. But it's important as we made these changes and discussions with Planning Commission and community, any changes that impact that C2 zoning district along Portland Avenue would also impact those other pockets that are zoned for C2 zoning. So what did the downtown plan recommend for specific changes to the C2 zoning district? These are a little repetitive from that first slide I had, but essentially providing more housing, middle housing, multi-household housing, attached residential housing. As I mentioned, prohibiting detached single family, some parking reductions. And in this case, this was previous in 2017 to the climate friendly equitable communities rulemaking. But at this time, calling on parking reductions, especially when affordable housing is close to transit. And then restrict off-street parking between the building and the street or front setback. So essentially having buildings closer to the street, closer to the sidewalk with parking behind or beside. So just a snapshot of the proposed amendments. So these tables, I've got a series of tables that I'll walk through. And the way these are represented is the specific zoning citation or section on the far left, the current standard and that second column, what the plan recommended, if it did have a recommendation in the third column, and then that fourth column over to the right, what is proposed in the amendments you're seeing tonight. So I'm just going to highlight some of these. These are all shown in the packet tonight. The first is uses in the C2 zoning district. Currently, there are a range of different uses, but there are some residential uses that are conditional in the C2 zone. So the amendments call for permitting a range of housing types, middle housing, including townhouses, cottage clusters, multifamily residential uses, and then, as I mentioned, prohibiting detached single family. A new provision that differed from the downtown plan was something that we talked about with the community and the Planning Commission, which is allowing certain manufacturing uses in the C2 zoning district as a conditional use. So in this case, you can see in the definitions in the code, thinking about uses such as a small microbrewery, for example. Parking requirements. I mentioned reduction of parking in the C2 zoning district because some of these zoning districts are located in areas that are outside of that half-mile to high-frequency transit, we do want to make sure we're still following along with the downtown plan recommendations. So you see here some reductions in parking minimums. So again, with all these changes to parking, these are changing parking minimums. So there's no reason an applicant or developer can propose more parking or parking as much as they see fit for that type of development. What we're talking about tonight is changes to the minimums that the city can require. Some changes to setbacks. The downtown plan recommended reducing setbacks for certain uses, prohibiting drive-through uses in the C2 zone. And again, this is in line with the walkable environment in a downtown area that you come to expect. Excuse me. Excuse me. And then height. The current requirements, allowances in the C2 zoning district allow for 35 feet. And there's a provision that would allow an applicant to extend an additional floor, so potentially 4 stories. That's if a sprinkler system is installed with that development. The downtown plan recommended in the C2 zoning district to maintain a 35-foot maximum height. So the amendments tonight talk about removing that height bonus for sprinkler system installation and just clarifying that 35 maximum height. So let's talk about the downtown core overlay district. This is a new overlay district. And for those of you not familiar with that term, this is essentially another layer of regulations in the zoning code that would apply on top of the base zoning district. So in this case, the downtown core overlay district would extend on top of the C2 commercial zoning district. So this is a better way of showing that. You can see this is the current zoning map for Gladstone, zoomed into the downtown area. Go back here. The pink color is existing C2 community commercial zoning. So you can see all the way along Portland Avenue. The yellow is existing single family residential zoning, the R5 zone. And then it may be hard to see on your screens, but this red dash line is the proposed boundary for the downtown core overlay district. So this follows essentially what the downtown plan recommended, going essentially from Exeter, West Exeter Street to the north, all the way along Portland Avenue to Arlington Street to the south. So some key recommendations from the downtown plan. Obviously, downtown plan called for this overlay zone to take place so that some additional design, site design and building design requirements could take place, allowing for a mixed use development and middle housing opportunities in downtown, requiring non-residential uses on the ground floor along Portland Avenue. That's another one that I'll talk about here in a second. Another provision is increasing the maximum height to 40 feet. And there's an incentive here, which is if an applicant redevelopment property were to provide a taller ground floor height, in this case, the downtown plan recommended a 15-foot height. If a 15-foot ground floor height were to be provided, then there would be an incentive or encouragement to allow for a taller building, so up to 40 feet. That was the recommendation. It recommended site and building design standards, as I mentioned, reduction in off-street parking standards, and reduced landscaping requirements as well. Again, these are all in line with the vision for a walkable, more urban core for downtown Gladstone. So a summary of some of the pieces, some of the big parts of this overlay district. A couple of changes that we discussed with the Planning Commission and the community. And the one here that I wanted to highlight first is the downtown plan recommending commercial uses on the ground floor. Things have changed. Obviously, the last 3 years have created a lot of change, especially in a downtown environment. And in conversations with staff, with Planning Commission, we recommend in the proposed amendments provide changing this slightly to instead require non-residential uses on the ground floor. So it provides a little bit more flexibility rather than just limiting permitted uses to commercial uses. So say allowing for office uses, more workspace, in addition to retail uses. Another addition that we discussed was permitting outright mobile vending units, which is a fancy term to describe food carts. So allowing food carts, mobile vending units as a permitted use outright. A number of different design standards, both building design, site design. And again, these follow along with downtown plan's vision for a vibrant urban street front. So things like building orientation, percentage of windows, entrances, parking, and landscaping. So for height in the downtown core overlay district, the downtown plan, as I mentioned, recommended increasing the 35-foot maximum going to a 40-foot height. The proposed amendments recommend or talk about retaining that 35-foot maximum height, but true to the downtown plan, allowing for that extra fourth floor up to 50 feet maximum if the ground floor height is at least 15 feet. So again, incentivizing that retail storefront at the ground floor, and then allowing an additional story up to 4 stories in that overlay district. Some other provisions requiring a primary entrance adjacent to the sidewalk along Portland Avenue. So recall reducing the distance between the sidewalk, the street, and the building front, making those really close to the street, making for a more walkable environment. And that includes reducing landscaping requirements that you would see in more of a suburban environment in front of buildings along the street front. So no minimum landscaping along Portland Avenue, but we do have provisions for extra design requirements for landscaping, especially for buffering with any off-street parking areas. And then lastly, the reduction of off-street parking requirements that was recommended in the downtown plan. As I mentioned, since 2017, just as recently as December 31st, 2022, state rules mandating elimination of parking minimums. So following along with state rules, removing those parking minimums per the state rules. So again, just some highlights of those changes. There's a lot more detail, obviously, and after the presentation, we'll have some more time to take questions and provide any discussion. So in summary, just to recap back to the purpose, really implementing code and policy recommendations from the downtown plan, the plan that was adopted by the city in 2017 to envision what could happen in this downtown core in Portland Avenue, meet future growth needs by creating opportunities for housing and employment in this very walkable area, complying with recent state rules, and then of course involving the community and decision makers in understanding potential changes. And with that, I believe Mr. Southgate had a few additional remarks, so I'd like to turn that over to him.
You want to turn the microphone on and
Good evening, Mayor Milch and members of council. I just want to briefly present one set of related changes which we all took to the Planning Commission, which they supported. This is actually came out of conversations with a property owner who's interested in developing his property with a food cart pod, which would be the first one in Gladstone, I believe. Thank you. So we worked together in crafting language. I'd refer you to page, I don't have a PowerPoint, but page 846 of your packet. And on the top, near the top of that page, let's see, section 1, building orientation. there's an exception that allows for specific uses that reinforce a pedestrian life to the street, whether it's Portland Avenue or a side street, as long as it's within this overlay zone. Those uses, properties are exempt from building orientation only for those explicit uses. So it's not a carte blanche to not meet the building orientation requirements, but for these uses of mobile food carts, plazas, water features, and or public art. Stemming from that requirement, the primary building entrance requirement, and then a couple pages down, the weather protection requirements, since you can't meet them if the building is set back from the street, there's an exemption from the primary building entrance requirements and the weather protection requirements in the case of properties that don't have the building oriented to the street. I could go deeper into this, but that's the gist of it. So.
All right. Thank you, John Southgate. All right. I think that concludes the staff report. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items that are already included in the agenda materials?
I have not received anything additional.
Okay. All right. Now we begin public testimony. So should I make a statement saying that the public hearing is officially beginning, or was that done by opening the whole thing originally?
That was done by opening the whole thing originally. Everything that you just heard was part of the public hearing.
Okay, very good. All right. So now we're allowing testimony from the public, those who have indicated a desire to testify. And as I said earlier, we would do it in this order: those in favor, those opposed, and those with neutral position. So does anyone wish to speak in support of the proposal? And I look to the city recorder to let me know if we had reservations prior or cards received tonight.
We had one individual that had signed up prior to, which was Terry Marsh, but he was tentatively scheduled and I do not see him on Zoom. And I do not see him in the audience. We had another gentleman that just signed up this evening, and I don't know if he is a proponent of an opponent or neutral, and that is Craig Llewellyn.
Okay, and I know that I recall that Mr. Llewellyn had corresponded with the Planning Commission earlier, I believe, on some specific issues. Do you have other people who have requested to speak, either opposed or neutral on the issue, just so I know?
I have not received any.
Okay, then I would call on Mr. Llewellyn to speak tonight.
Thank you, Your Honor. Excuse me. Thank you, Your Honor and Council.
If you want to state your name for the record.
Yeah, I'm Craig Llewellyn. I have an investment property on, it's actually two addresses. We have an ADU on it. It's 160 West Clackamas Boulevard and 165 Arlington. And we live in Canby, Oregon. Excuse me. We were part of that meeting back last summer, and somehow we lost track of all the meetings. Late last year got kind of crazy, but we caught back up earlier this year and we were able to go to the last Planning Commission meeting. Our property sits, I don't know, Tammy, can we pull up that map again like we did at the Planning Commission? Showing the outlay of the.
John, are you able to bring up the
John.
map?
Yes.
We have that dotted line. What I'm here tonight to do is to request to expand that dotted line so we could get into the overlay zone. We have kind of a piece of property that's really, its next step is to be developed. We like to have the flexibility to kind of watch how this town proceeds from here and be able to do something in conjunction with it. We have in the ADU, the garage portion that faces Arlington. We're just outside of that dotted line towards the river, and we're right in the middle between Portland Avenue and the I can't remember that other road.
Bellevue?
Bellevue, thank you. We're really right in the middle there. And we're just asking to have that area expanded. We would be able to, with that, we could have mixed use. We could continue to have the residents above. We could do a business down below, whether it's a tap room, a wine bar. We could have some food carts there as well. We could do a restaurant with housing above the house itself. It could be a high-end restaurant. And it also makes sense too, from the parking standpoint, we wouldn't be able to meet that 5-car parking there either. I know the state has changed that, but my understanding is that's getting challenged now. So it would just give us more flexibility with that as well. And if you bring the bridge back too, it just kind of makes sense that as you come over that bridge, it's just kind of a natural that would be part of that. So I'm just asking for that to be expanded. Hope I did that right.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
That's provided that clarification for us. Just a little context for the public. When we originally looked at this, the overlay zone was proposed to be primarily for properties that fronted on Portland Avenue, but did not extend all the way to the end of the current zone, which is about a half block away from Portland Avenue, except at the bottom, as you see on that little map, where it kind of makes a little L to the left and goes all the way to Bellevue. So Mr. Llewellyn's property is on the south side, the river side of Arlington Street, directly across the street from the properties on the north side of Arlington Street, which are included in the proposed zone right now. And what he is asking is that perhaps if that zone extends across Arlington Street to properties that are on that south side of Arlington, he's suggesting that would be an expansion he wants us to consider. So I would describe you as in favor of the proposal in general with a desire to amend it slightly.
I'm very in favor of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Tammy, do you have any more direct testimony scheduled or requested?
I do not, and I do not show any hands up.
Okay. All right. Do any members of the commission have any questions regarding the testimony that includes the staff report? Or if there are no further questions, I will close the hearing to additional public testimony.
I have a question.
Councillor Huckabee.
Thank you. Not sure exactly who's going to answer this, but on page 8-39 under section 17.18.040, number 1 is crossed out and it had said automobile service station. And it's being suggested that be removed. But to my recollection, I believe we have 2 of those in this zone. So my question is what's happening or what would happen with those properties?
And so by automobile service station, you are assuming that this means a place that services automobiles or a place that provides gasoline for automobiles?
Not a gas station, service.
Okay, all right. Do we have any response from staff? Yes, Chad.
So Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. So for pre-existing businesses, this will not affect them. They are allowed to continue to operate as a pre-existing non-conforming use. However, new businesses would not be allowed to open of that type.
Okay, so it would be no effect on our current businesses that are there.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I wanted to clarify something that John said in his report when he was describing the rules regarding single-family homes. He left out a word a couple of times, no new single-family homes. It's a similar situation. We have homes along Portland Avenue that are single-family homes and we would not be saying they need to disappear. They would be allowed to stay. Is that correct?
That's correct. And generally speaking, you have to continue to use that. So if someone stops using it as a single family home or stops using it as a service station, then they wouldn't be able to re-up it and do it again. So as long as you continue to use it with that non-conforming use, you can continue to do so. If you stop it, then future development needs to comply with the new rules.
Okay. Other questions or comments from council members?
What about should the existing single home families or single family homes that don't comply, should they seek a building permit of some kind or addition to their home? They would have to go before the planning commission.
I've actually, Heather Austin with the planning side, I've been looking at your non-conforming use code on other projects, and I can answer that there are provisions for doing normal maintenance, and then there's even provisions for doing expansions and things. So you would have to remove up to 75% of the building from the site to not be able to make upgrades if something happened or if somebody decided to extend it. There's actually specific language in your non-conforming use section regarding single family homes. Normal maintenance, expansion, remodeling, alteration, or replacement of single family dwelling is considered separately. So you really have a solid code section there for non-conforming pre-existing single family homes.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, thank you so much for familiarizing yourself with our code so quickly to be able to answer a question like that with such clarity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You have Counselor Reichel has a question.
All right, I'll call on Counselor Reichel first. Go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Counselor Huckabee's question regarding, and I guess maybe this applies to any business existing right now. If a business owner were to sell their business to a new owner, they would still be able to be grandfathered in, for lack of a better term, if the buyer was continuing to utilize the business or run the business. Would they be exempt, I guess, is my question. Hopefully that makes sense.
Chad or Heather, I'll throw this one to you.
I believe they have 1 year to be able to continue the use. Non-conforming single-family dwellings may be expanded, remodeled, altered, or replaced where there's no increase in the number of dwelling units and where substantial construction of any replacement occurs within 1 year of destruction. So that's for your single-family homes. I'm looking to see if there's similar language for a commercial type business.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Alexander.
I just want to know what the gentleman that just spoke, 165 Arlington, he wants us to extend that over to his property. What's the process for that? How can we go about that? Does it have to go to the planning commission, come to us? What?
It wouldn't have to go to the planning commission, but I would ask that John Southgate come up and discuss what the potential risks are with expanding the overlay district.
Okay, because we want businesses here, right? I mean, so what, there would be risk? Okay, let's hear.
Potentially, they may not be big risks.
Okay.
All right, John, could you respond to that question, please?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think the risks from everything, of the conversations I've had with the team from MIG as well as with state officials, is the risks are pretty minimal. Whenever you look at in this case, an overlay zone that's going to, at least on paper, intensify what can be developed there's on paper traffic impacts. And yet this is a modest enough proposed expansion of that boundary that I think would be nominal impact on traffic at nearby intersections. Does that expose the city to a challenge that we haven't done an analysis of the additional trips that might be generated by redevelopment of that block? I'd say marginally. I would say if someone is going to challenge this legally, I think this possible change that you might consider, I don't think it's going to sway that potential appellant one way or the other. That's my considered opinion.
So is that they can apply and we can expand the overlay for them?
I think you have that authority, yes.
Okay.
I'd say there's a tiny risk that someone will say, all right, that's it. I was okay with this until they made that one little change to the boundary, and then I decided to appeal. I think the likelihood of that is pretty small.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think more people have an issue with the parking in any of this. So thank you.
I have
All right. Councilor
Garlington.
Garlington, yes.
That's right.
Get your face.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. My question is, the the proposed area. Explain to me how you came about just those blocks and not, I guess in my vision, I'm thinking to myself, why are we not moving down Portland Avenue and including the beautiful new building we're sitting in and the beautiful new building we're going to look at as our Public Works building? It just feels like we're stop and go here.
Yeah.
So what is the factor behind
Sure.
just what you've got?
Sure. And I'll probably ask Mr. Finas to correct anything I'm about to say.
Okay.
I think that relatively small 4-block area from Arlington to Exeter is based on the downtown plan of 2017. That was sort of the core of the core. That said, I'm very much of the same opinion that I view this as the first step. I think the potential, I drove down the street just this evening coming to the hearing, and it struck me that there are areas north of Exeter that lend themselves to being part of that development. And I think that I would encourage the council, to be at least open to that possibility. I'd also say that unlike the small little incremental change that Mr. Llewellyn has proposed, if the overlay zone were to go all the way up to where we're sitting, that's probably a doubling or more or tripling of the overlay zone. That I think exposes us to greater risk of, okay, what are the traffic impacts of not X acres, but Y acres?
Right.
What Mr. Llewellyn is saying, it's going to be X acres plus, Y prime. So that's one distinction I would make. But I hope that eventually it is expanded based on property owner interest.
Yeah, okay. And then the other thing I'd like to just add is, Mr. Finas, can you, Phineas, did I say that right? Could you bring that little map back up? It's on our page 833 and others. So the proposed change that you're talking about is not a small area. In fact, it would be the size of 3+ of what some of these blocks are at the top. And I'm not saying I'm voting for it one way or the other. I'm not proponent. I'm just, do you realize both sides of that would be a very large parcel? That's a, it's not small. That's what I guess I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
Just FYI, looking at the square footage.
It's not infinitesimal, indeed.
Yes, and we are talking about both sides
Yeah.
because we're talking about that gateway from Gladstone to Oregon City, which, as we all hope at one time, will be connected by a walking bridge, a path bridge of some sort.
Right.
So I just want to bring out that, both sides of these, and if we as a council make that kind of call, what does it, I'm going to go back to my statement before that I brought about with the small water issue we had a few months ago. Property in Gladstone, or a homeowner's property, is their single largest investment. So if you're going to make a change to somebody's property, they got to know about it. Bottom line, there's no way that you can make a change to somebody's property without letting them know. I truly believe in that. And to do something like that without them knowing would be erroneous on our part. It's not our money. It's not our investment. It is their property and their money. I truly believe that. So, and I have a couple more questions, but I'll leave that discussion back out there.
To be clear, though, Mr. Southgate, we have notified all of these property owners several times, and this is actually reducing the restrictions of what they can do on their property, which would increase in value. But I did want to be clear that you knew all of these property owners have been notified multiple times of this process.
But not that they will definitely be included in this change.
Yes, we have sent this map with a letter to the property owners, and we have had no rejections from that.
And the ones on this side of Arlington?
The ones that,
Outside of the red dotted line.
Mr. Llewellyn's, we have not, no. And that's one of the decisions that you guys have to make in expanding the overlay zone.
Well, one other thought, this will be not as clean a solution, but one option would be to have the overlay zone take in that one property, Mr. Llewellyn's property. So you'd have to have an odd little finger sticking out as opposed to the entire block. So you have three options as I see it. Keep the boundary as you see on the map, take in the entirety of both, or maybe just one of those blocks, I guess, or just take in the one property.
Okay. So I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Proceed.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in 2017.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Your microphone?
Oh, my
Thank you.
apologies. In 2017, we got a downtown revitalization plan, compliments of the city of Gladstone. And we've looked at this book. We've looked at these pictures. Everybody has seen them. In this book and on here, there is a picture of what downtown Gladstone could look like with a 3-story building, not a 4-story building, a 3-story building. A 4-story building, in my opinion, takes our skyline away. It would hover over the city of Gladstone, and now we would start looking like Selwood, which in my opinion is not pretty.
Counselor, just
yes.
to interrupt, we will do deliberation on these issues in a minute. Right now, we're allowing questions for clarification of the testimony that's given already. So hold your comments on pros and cons, your own views until we get to the deliberation point, if you would.
Okay.
I want to respect and be sure that that's heard in the context of what everyone else says.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
We have one hand up on the Zoom, and I believe there's someone in the audience that wants to address the council.
All right.
as well.
If you, do you know which order they should be?
We can start with the person on Zoom, Kelly. Kelly, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I did.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Kelly Cheney. I live on Alley Court, which is right off of Hereford, corner of Hereford and Portland Avenue. I'm generally in favor of this project, but just tonight I heard some things I didn't hear before, and I just wanted some clarification or just to kind of put some people on notice. I love food carts. I work downtown. I go to food carts, but they notoriously attract a massive amount of rats. And if I was living next to a food cart, I would have a huge problem with that. I mean, we have a rodent problem in Gladstone. My neighbors had a chicken coop on my fence, and I literally had them at my back sliding glass door constantly. I mean, really, really bad, no matter what I did. And I know everyone else in Gladstone will tell the same stories, but nothing personally against food carts, but there's things like that that come up. Also with expanding that line towards the river and then putting restaurants and food carts towards the river where the rodents are really bad. If I was a property owner there, I would be freaked out about that. And it's not like a small little thing. It's a huge problem. So I just wanted to bring that up and maybe someone can address it. And that was it. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. You, an audience member, like to, yes, I recognize Bob Everett.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Bob Everett. I have a dental practice on Portland Avenue. And my question is the same one that was asked before about existing businesses. If you sell, is that person required to change and move to the new codes? In a perfect world, I'd love to do it, but I don't know that that's a possibility. At some time in my life, I figure I'm going to actually sell, and I just want to make sure that they won't be forced into doing, they probably want to do it at some time, but forced into changing the whole building.
Bob, I happen to know that you have a building with parking that fronts the street. Your
That's
building is
correct.
set back.
Right.
So you have a specific concern about that element of the
Sure.
code.
Sure. Would that person have to now rebuild and put, be 5 feet away?
Okay.
I would
so-
think he'd want to, he or she would want to, but
All right. Heather, do you have some insight into this?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Milch. So I'll just reference chapter 17.76, the exceptions chapter. It does state that if a non-conforming use is discontinued for a period of 1 year, further use on the property shall conform to the title. So that does apply to any uses. You would have to discontinue the use for an entire year before you would not be able to operate that use again. And then a non-conforming development, which conforms to in respect to the use. So a use such as yours that's a permitted use in the zone, but is not meeting the structural standards or the design standards, it may be altered or extended, provided the alteration or extension conforms to the standards. So if you wanted to add on to the building, you just need to do it toward compliance, but you wouldn't have to take down the existing building or change the site. So that 1 year does apply to all uses per your exceptions chapter.
so I'm clear. The person would have to conform within 1 year or no?
No, I'm sorry.
I'm still a little bit fuzzy.
As
sorry.
long as the person began operating a business within 1 year of
Okay,
you
that's how I heard it.
vacating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So. that
You're
answers my
welcome.
questions. Okay.
Does
So
it
the
have to
goal
be
is to
same
sort of-
Business?
It does not have to be a same business. It has to be a permitted business in that zone to be able to occupy that non-conforming structure.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
for the clarification.
So the goal is to have some more continuity of business operations there, not something that would then be, shut down for a long period of time and then attempt to reopen later. Got it.
And by the way, I think this is great.
Thank you, Dr. Everett. All right. Do we have other questions or clarification from members of, I had one. If we wanted to, because we've had two comments related to possible expanding of the proposed outline of the overlay zone. If we wanted to expand it at some point in the future, either farther north to incorporate some more of those blocks, if we've given this a chance for a while and it looks like it might be something that would be good, or to the south, if we want to further involve the residents down there, the homeowners, as the comments have been made, how difficult is it to expand an overlay zone once it's been put into place? And I know that's a very subjective thing, but what kind of steps would be taken?
Thank you, Mayor Milch. Heather Austin again. You would go through the same process that you're under this evening, where you initiate that amendment, you send notice to the Department of Land Conservation Development, and then conduct a hearing with your planning commission, who then makes a recommendation. The city council makes a decision. But just I'll also mention that in John Phoenix's presentation, he identified the climate friendly and equitable communities provisions that are coming forward. And we in Gladstone, as a metro city, we have certain requirements that we have to meet over the coming years. So we do plan to have a conversation with you, the council, I believe in April, regarding those rules. And one of those rules is to designate a town center for Gladstone, which is on the to-do list that we need to be working on. So that is another bite at the apple, if you will. We'll have an opportunity to look at our downtown core in relation to what we want to consider our town center and make decisions about what we want to consider the whole at that point. So I think there are more opportunities ahead of us in about the next year to 18 months to be able to think about these things.
Okay, I look forward to that. Any other questions or desire for clarification from members of the council before we close the hearing? All right, I will accept a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Huckabee, seconded by Councilor Alexander to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All right, Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the public hearing is closed. we now move to the point in the meeting where we can deliberate to reach a decision. So we want to know if there's discussion by council members. Who would like to begin?
I was looking for the page on the food cart thing again. What page was that on? Why am I keep going by it?
John Southgate, do you happen to recall which page the specific language allowing food carts?
Yeah, 8-45, the last paragraph on 8-45, mobile vending units are allowed outright in the overlay zone, but only the overlay zone.
Did you have a comment or?
I guess I don't understand why we would put a mobile vending unit on any parcel in the downtown corridor, and yet we're asking people to build these beautiful buildings. It just seems park a car there, but also spend $10 million putting up a new building. I guess I'm not getting the two sides of that. We're looking for beautification. Can anybody visualize this? Got this big, new, beautiful
Right.
building, and we're gonna put a food cart next to it.
Do you want me to?
Yes, I'd
Sure,
love
go
to
ahead.
hear
You've seen development happen in other downtown regions and
Yeah.
other areas, so let us share with your experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think in my experience, a downtown, for a downtown to really come to life, it often takes baby steps. You don't start with a 3 or 4 story building, mixed use. It starts with uses to start attracting people there. So whether it's a food cart pod or other outdoor activities, downtown Beaverton used to have, maybe they still do in their park next to the library, outdoor films. That just draws lots of people. Then all of a sudden, a couple restaurants start to open, and then all of a sudden people kind of want to live there. So I would view that food carts are sort of it's a canary in the mine shaft that something's happening here. I think the one in Milwaukee is the best one that comes to mind. I think that the one right there at the Max station in downtown Milwaukee is a real draw for downtown Milwaukee. It's part of the energy that downtown Milwaukee is experiencing. And indeed now there's the one project, Axle Tree, a block or so away. There's other developments that are in the wings in downtown Milwaukee. That would be my best response.
I guess I can understand like a food cart. Like, here's a piece of property and we're going to put 3 or 4 food carts there. But to bulldoze the corner of Arlington and Portland Avenue, put concrete down and stick one food pod in the corner there, that just, to me, defeats the purpose.
And I would agree with that. I think that's unlikely. The pattern typically is you take sort of a leftover property. I can't think of an example where someone tore down a building that's generating revenue and then replacing it with a few food carts, because that's not going to generate the same level of revenue as an office building or retail shop. It's really those parcels that are, I'd call them derelict. Those are the likely targets of a food cart pod, like the one in Milwaukee, leftover parcel next to the Max station.
And for clarification here, the specific property where the new property owner has expressed desire to have food carts is not located at the corner of Portland Avenue and Arlington Street. It's slightly to the west of that. Is that correct?
Yes, and having talked with him, I think his idea is to take his existing building that faces Arlington and maybe put in, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but a brew pub or something like that. And then, yeah, maybe having in the existing paved area between that building and the street, 2 or 3 food carts, like the example you gave.
So something, perhaps something similar to corner 14 in Oregon City that maybe some of us are familiar with.
Right. That's another good
A
example.
brick and mortar brew pub type restaurant with food carts adjacent. I'm sorry, I interrupted you,
No,
Council.
I just want to say, keeping in mind that this is not just that one spot. We are talking about this area and the precedents going forward to move the same rules all the way down Portland Avenue, hopefully at some point, correct?
Yes, if you were to adopt this and then expand the overlay, unless you distinguish that only in this stretch of Portland Avenue, you'd have to make that specification. Otherwise, yes, potentially it expand more. My sense is the market is not there to have more than 2 or 3 food cart pods. And the 2 that we're talking about, I think, are going to be modest in scale. There's just not room for like a full city block.
Okay.
All right, Councilor Alexander.
Okay, so just to keep this simple, I like this.
Thank you.
Is we're doing these amendments so the business owners can have the access to do this, or to bring in developers to do this. I mean, that's the whole idea behind doing these amendments, to get people to come bring money, or the people that are here invest their money into beautifying Portland Avenue. Is that what this is? I mean, this whole thing could be wrapped up into that ball right there.
If I had to boil it down to one sentence, I think that's a pretty good sentence.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. So, okay. So
And I would add, I'm glad you asked that, because I reflected coming here. We actually have 3 property owners after years, maybe even decades of relative inaction. Now you have 3 property owners who are paying attention. They got the notice about this, and oh gosh, I'm interested in doing something with my property. You should be pleased with what's happening in your downtown.
okay, thank you.
Other councilors?
I would
Care
still
to-
like to discuss the 3 versus the 4 stories.
All right, this would be the time to do that. About the height requirement. Go ahead.
Yes, so in our packet from June 1st of 2017, there's a lovely picture of a brick and mortar, businesses below, 2 stories on top, and then we got the presentation and it's the same photo. However, in language, there's a couple of different spots that it says, you know, if you got a 15-foot ceiling, you can go here. If you've got the sprinkler, talk about the sprinklers in the building, which in my opinion, anything over 2 stories should have sprinklers. You know, it talks about the height requirements on that. But aside from that, in the pictures that we saw in this is also 3 stories. However, in the language, it sneaks in that 4th story. And I distinctly remember hearing a lot of hubbub about 3 stories and 4 stories over the years. And there was not very many people happy about having 4 stories. 4 stories just closes off the sky, and it's not this. It's not this. It's a whole nother thing. And now you got no blue sky there. And if you're going to put that on 2 sides of the street, I hope you got a lot of lights. So I just can't support 4 stories. I don't think it's for Gladstone. I think I can see where some people might want it, especially those that are closer to the river that would want to put up 4 stories so they've got that view over there. But I just don't think that's Gladstone. And I think there's a lot of people out there that agree with that. And I have a hard time with the parking, but I get it. Everything that John and Jackie have been working for years on, I am in full support of people bringing money in and doing those things, but I am not in support of a 4-story building in downtown Gladstone. I've seen downtown Sellwood. It does nothing for me. And a lot of people agree with that.
Thank you. Other members of the council?
Well, is there any way we could, I mean, I sort of agree with that. From like you go to Willamette and Milwaukee and see all that, 2, 3 stories is okay, but is there any way we can do all this, but only 3 stories, not 4? I mean, is that a lot more work or?
We could certainly recommend, amend certain language. There's part of the code that I'd like to see changed a little bit based on input we've had from a property owner. And maybe this is a good time to share some of that input. On page 8-53 is an email sent to us by Terry Marsh, who intended to participate tonight, but had another meeting. But he
Mayor
did
Milch, I
provide,
wanted to
yes.
let you know that Terry Marsh is now here available if you want to reopen the public hearing.
All right. Is there a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded by Councilors Huckabee and Alexander. Tammy, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Huckabee.
Yes.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes.
Counselor Reichel.
Yes.
Counselor Roberts.
Yes.
Counselor Garlington.
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes. The public hearing is reopened for the purpose of hearing the testimony of Mr. Marsh, who had indicated in advance he desired to testify tonight. So you get him on the line, please, Tammy?
He's actually here in person.
Oh, he's here in person. Oh, Terry, I didn't even see you there. Come forward, please. So this is one of the advantages to having something that takes a long time, is that if you have another obligation, you can still manage to get to the meeting.
Well,
Go ahead.
I appreciate your patience with me. I was pulling double duty tonight, and anyway, I really do appreciate your accommodations. My name's Terry Marsh. My address is 6310 Southeast Jennings Avenue, Milwaukee, Oregon. I'm one of those folks that sits in the school district, but just barely outside of Gladstone. I have neighbors that throw rocks at me. First of all, let me say I'm a proponent of this overlay zone and the change in the code. I do have some concerns. I didn't get a chance to hear some of yours, so I apologize if I repeat anything that may have been said. But we do own the property, my family does, on 220 Portland Avenue, the corner of Arlington and Portland Avenue. And we've taken a stab at this before, as some of you may or may not be aware. Half a dozen years ago, my father attempted to develop it. That was not a good cost benefit analysis, nor was it a very good exercise. Most of it had to do with the issues surrounding parking. And because of that, we have a 10,000 square foot lot, but the building size, the footprint of the building couldn't be any more than 3,000 square feet. So even though we accommodated 3 floors, by the time we got all done looking at that cost benefit analysis, there was just no way it was going to pencil. And so my dad at that point in time walked away from it. Parking was the major underlying factor associated with that. You just can't get the economies of scale associated with putting something like that together and only being able to utilize a third of the lot. Okay. So with that said, you can see why now I'm more of a proponent of what you've got going here, because we have an opportunity to look at developing the entire 10,000 square foot lot. There are a couple of concerns that we have. I expressed those in my letter. I won't repeat all of that other than maybe just to outline it. We are concerned in terms of being able to have conversations, which I've had with developers and with commercial brokers. They've suggested that the 15-foot bottom floor for a 4-level structure is probably cost prohibitive in terms of actually being able to get a return on that investment. You think about a building, and if you go all up and down Portland Avenue, I think the largest ceiling height of any building currently on Portland Avenue is about 12 feet. Most of the buildings you walk into are 8. This is 15. You've got a lot of structure, a lot of engineering, a lot of development costs associated with that. And when it is you're trying to return that investment with a retailer, that's pretty difficult to do. So I've suggested in the testimony that I provided to you that you consider letting the market drive what the height of that first floor should be, because it really does amount to a significant increase in what the costs are of those structures going to a 15-foot ceiling. Okay. The second thing is we talked about the vertical windows, and I wanted to be able to refer directly to the section. I think I've got it here. It's your section 172107 2B. And it talks about the upper floor window orientation must be vertical or have a width that is no greater than the width of the ground floor windows. So let's imagine this. You've got a retail space on the bottom floor. You've got your picture windows or whatever they may be associated with that. So now you've got residential. Oh, I didn't know I had a time limit. Should I cut it short? My apologies.
What's the pleasure? Okay. Go ahead and can finish your thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can concentrate them. And, but that was another consideration. When it is you're looking at residential structures on those second, third floors, not necessarily does it make sense to have this alignment of the windows. Why? Because now you've just effectively said, this is all the more units you're going to have. The math doesn't work because you have viewing windows on that second, third level, but they're limited in where it is they can be placed because they have to be tied vertically to the bottom floor. Those were the two significant things that the developers that we have spoken to and the real estate brokers had in terms of input for you. Their perspective is that less is more. The more flexibility you can provide, particularly considering the economy, considering the status of a lot of the retailers, considering a number of different situations now. You've got restaurants that in many of these kinds of locations are failing. They need to be able to look at a broader breadth of retail types of uses. They suggested that you just provide as much flexibility as possible. Those were the two things that were included in this code draft that really stuck out to them. And they thought, ooh, red flags, this really limits our flexibility. So I'm trying to think if I had anything else. I don't think so, other than I just got my gum stuck all over my lips. Apologize for that.
We did receive your email that became part of the record, the letter you sent, and we have reviewed that. And I appreciate your summary of those two major issues.
Okay.
So thank you for your testimony. Yep. Are there any questions to clarify Mr. Marsh's testimony?
I would just like to say that I understand what he's saying, and that I'd like to. I don't like to downgrade what our planning commission has been through in their meetings, and would love to hear how they came about the question. Obviously, they've had more discussion about it than we have. And I never want to downgrade or not take into consideration what they have talked about.
Which question, which specific, the windows issue or?
Windows. Yeah.
All right.
I do have an apology with respect to that. I was late coming to these deliberations with the Planning Commission. So I would say in their defense, some of the thoughts that I brought forward were late for their consideration. And so these things that I've just mentioned to you, they really didn't get an opportunity adequately to deliberate on them. It was at their approval meeting where it is most of this was brought forward.
Right.
All right. I'd like to call on John Phoenix perhaps to give an answer to Councilor Garlington's question. You have the part of the code that you've designed that shows some sketches. You have a desire here to have some consistency in appearance. That was part of this. Can you say a little bit in response to Councilor Garlington's question about the reasoning behind the kinds of window rules that Mr. Marsh is concerned about?
Yeah, of course, Mayor. The couple things we talked about a lot at the Planning Commission. Some of the things that came up so far tonight did come up in planning commission as well. The ground floor height was one of those. But since the question is specifically about the upper story windows, I just wanted to point out the fact that there is no set of design guidelines for new construction in downtown. So there really isn't an ability for the city to have a say in what buildings look like, any discretionary type of guidelines to say, you know, this proposal doesn't look great. I wish we could do it this way. The city doesn't have that structure currently. So just with that background, the impetus for these standards is to provide some certainty into the architecture, or the development that the city intends to see. So everything in the overlay district comes out of the downtown plan, because there was a lot of community involvement. There was a lot of analysis into what was envisioned for that core area. So with that as some context, the provision for those upper floor windows comes in play to give the city some certainty that one upper story development has some windows that are provided. There's some symmetry. There's some connection and relationship to the ground floor. That's the intent of making that very specific. So I would say, you know, these are open to interpretation. And I don't recall if we talked about window orientation for the upper floors in particular with Planning Commission. But I would say that overall there was approval to align any kind of regulation, any kind of design standard, building design standard, with the intent of the downtown plan. So I think kind of the 2 points there: one, providing some certainty and making that very specific, clear, objective, and then two, making sure that that development, especially a multi-story development, aligns with the vision for downtown. Since the question came up with the building height, I can provide a little bit of context for that. Currently, the C2 zoning district, what's allowed today with that sprinkler provision would allow for potentially a 4-story building. So that's currently permitted in the C2 zoning district. So I believe it's 35 feet. And then, as I mentioned, if the development is sprinkled, then it could go up to the 40-story max height. So there's some refinements with the zoning code amendments tonight. One is to keep that maximum height in the C2 zoning district at 35 feet. And then two, with an overlay district, to incentivize active ground floor design. And so typically that means taller, higher quality ground floor construction. The average is anywhere from 15 feet, maybe it's a few feet lower, maybe it's a few feet higher, but 15 feet is what we commonly see for a really high quality retail development. And obviously what we talked about earlier is providing some flexibility. So where the downtown plan talked about making sure that that's a commercial retail use, instead with the Planning Commission, we talked about, well, let's provide some flexibility by saying, let's make that a non-residential use. So like an office, for example, in addition to retail. So we did talk quite a bit about the ground floor height. Again, that's an incentive. If the developer applicant wanted to go to 4 stories or 50 feet maximum, then that 15-foot ground floor would have to be provided. So it's, again, incentivizing something that the community would like to see, that's expressed in the downtown plan, but it's not a requirement. So you could have a 10-foot ground floor. You're just going to have to stay with the 35-foot maximum height. So it's a bit of an incentive to get the type of development that the city would like to see.
Thank you, John. All right, is there a motion to close? I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor Alexander.
I just wondered, has anyone thought of, I mean, especially with your property, the underground parking coming in on that one, going underground, going out, I mean, that way you get 3 and not 4 and you get, we marked it off. Remember I told you the guy from Happy's and you can get about 12 cars in there. And if you you already got part of it. I mean, just take it out and then could you, only make it 3 stories? Would that benefit you or not?
It's very expensive.
Okay, there you go. All right, thanks.
All right, Councilor Garlington, your microphone is on. Did you have another comment? Okay, just wanted to be sure. Is there a motion to reclose the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Councilors Huckabee and Alexander. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Garlington.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
No. Mayor Milch.
Yes, the public hearing is closed. So we move back to deliberation. So now we're continuing to deliberate. Hopefully we've had some clarification on a couple of these issues. Are there, I'll take a turn myself. On the issue of the height, I did go down to Portland Avenue on my bicycle one day not long ago. No, I walked down there that day because my wife was using the car. And I took a tape measure with me and measured the ceiling heights of a number of the commercial and retail businesses in the downtown area. And Mr. Marsh is correct. The highest ceiling I could find was the center ceiling of the public library, which is 13 feet, although the edges of the ceiling in the public library ground floor area are 11 feet. The Bound to Happen store has an 8-foot ceiling. A number of the other stores have 8 foot. The Cookie Pot, the children's consignment store, and the hair salon next to it have 10-foot ceilings. The Happy Restaurant has an 8-foot ceiling in the portion of the building where the public sits in the restaurant. I didn't check their kitchen, I have to confess. So to look for some consistency, I don't know that 15 foot would be in any way the average size of what we're seeing currently in downtown development for non-residential uses on the ground floor. I would be more inclined, if we want to offer an incentive to provide to go to a higher height, I would be more inclined to make 12 foot that incentive. And the only 12-foot building ceiling I could find was in the Gladstone Mercantile building, the antique stores that occupy 3 spaces between Dartmouth and Clarendon on the west side of the street, east side, sorry, of Portland Avenue. And they do have a 12-foot ceiling. And to me, the way it's filled with merchandise, it looks enormous. I can't imagine a 15-foot ceiling. Although I know I've been in buildings with some that have some exposed ventilation and some of the other kinds of things. And maybe that tends to bring it down from the eye level. But one change, if I were to propose any change, it would be that we reduce that 15-foot incentive to 12 foot. And it would be helpful to get some input from the experts. We had talked before about a 10-foot ground floor allowing for a 40-foot building. And that would average, if that were a 4-story, 40-foot building, that would mean an average of 10 feet per floor. And I'm wondering if 12 feet going up to 48 or 50 feet, 12 feet per floor, what is the average height per floor of a typical building in this kind of a district? Can I turn to my planner or other folks to kind of ask that question? Is it appropriate to ask a question for that kind of clarification?
Yeah, I think John Phoenix can address that for you.
Okay, John, thank you.
Mayor, I would say for an average floor, I'd say 10 to 12 feet. floor to ceiling, I would say would be the average.
Okay, so, and again, that's not necessarily, obviously, there's space in between floors and ceilings, between levels of a building, but a 48-foot building with a 12-foot ground floor could have, structurally, it would be sound. It's not that you need so much more than that. I don't know that. It's a minor change, but it's a little bit of a compromise in the direction of what I'm hearing from some of the folks, and it's certainly a change. What I appreciate about Mr. Marsh's testimony is that we have to look at the changing market and the current situation especially. You didn't mention, but I know having spoken to people in the real estate industry, the cost of capital right now is much higher than it was even a year ago. Mortgage rates, any of you who have been looking for homes, went from 3% at the end of 2022 to what's close to 6% now, I think. And that adds a considerable amount of the cost. And the types of buildings we're hoping to see people invest in this community require getting capital, getting people to invest and expect a certain interest rate return on that investment. That combined with, again, the issue of being able to pencil out the construction cost per the expected return on a property, if you're going to rent it as housing, if you're going to rent it as commercial. Construction costs have also gone up since COVID and some of the supply chain issues associated with the war in Ukraine and other things. So those make us look at this issue a little differently than we did in 2017 when we made these original recommendations in generalities and some original code recommendations back then. So I'm leaning toward understanding the changes that the Planning Commission has recommended and that our consultants have recommended regarding greater flexibility, slightly higher height limitations, because I think we want development to happen. We don't want to make a bunch of rules and then have nobody come and want to do this. If we want to revitalize downtown, we have to offer enough incentives to make people want to do it. Otherwise, we have rules for something that never gets built because no one can make a profit from it. No one can pencil it out in trying to plan it. So that's my comments on the issue. I'll hear from other councilors.
Mayor Milch, Councilor Reichel has her hand up.
Yes, Councilor Reichel, go ahead.
I just really, for clarification, I just was curious, using a 15-foot ceiling, like to incentivize higher building, is that directly related to structural situations? I mean, I'm not an engineer. I have no idea how any of this works, but I'm just curious why 15 feet would then allow for a higher, like a 4-story building.
John, can you speak to that, please?
I can, yeah. And I think I'll try to stick right to answer your question. I think the best way to answer that is it wouldn't necessarily lead to a taller building. But again, it's an incentive. So if an applicant would like a taller building, then there's something that the applicant would have to provide. So something extra that doesn't currently exist. So in this case, it was to say, okay, let's say you can go up to 35 feet, but an applicant comes in and says, well, I'd like to go up to an extra story to 4 floors. Well, you can do that, but you'll have to provide a taller ground floor. So that's really the intent. So it isn't to say that that would result in a taller building. It's just that if an applicant would want a taller building, there'd have to be something that's provided in addition to just meeting the minimum standards.
Okay, just to kind of follow up on that, just again, I mean, and perhaps this is something that we've already discussed, and I apologize, but I just wonder what the draw is there for a developer, like, or what is the benefit to us as a city having 15-foot ceiling? Like, why is that what we chose, I guess? Maybe that's a planning commission question more than you. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I wasn't involved with the downtown plan, so I don't want to speak to the, what kind of went into it during that process. But from what I've seen in other communities, it can be lower, it can be higher. I think when the plan was developed, I'm assuming, pun intended, that the city was aiming high, looking for something that had a higher standard. And so other communities, it could be lower than that. I think the mayor mentioned his own reconnaissance in downtown, looking at the average being much lower than that. And some of those buildings I know they're pretty old. And so in the time that those were built, there was a higher quality of construction and thinking about something that's going to be around for a long time. And so that's really kind of the intent of those taller ground floor heights. I think it's a good point the mayor makes on reconsidering, is 15 feet the right height. That number can change, obviously. I think, again, coming from the downtown plan, thinking about a higher quality ground floor, at that point, thinking it was going to be retail, it was going to be commercial use. Now, obviously, the amendments tonight are talking about some flexibility, maybe it's office. So that number, in my opinion, if it's not 15 feet, it's not a deal breaker. So if it's a few feet less than that, I think the intent is still met. But I completely understand how much conditions have changed and the city's interest in meeting those terms and meeting those changes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Just to follow up, my experience has been that when you walk in a very walkable downtown of the type that we're envisioning here, and you're looking and you're on the sidewalk level, you're not noticing the heights of the building so much as you are the ground floor that you're walking past. And I was more concerned about a 15-foot ground floor looking out of place in the context of what we have now than I was about taller buildings looking out of place, because you don't notice the height once you become a pedestrian or a bicycle rider who's going past at ground level at a slow speed and absorbing the value and vitality of what is being developed in the city. So comments from?
I'd like to go ask John if we could go back to your PowerPoint slide on the specific page that talks about the building heights. There was 3 columns there, kind of shaded blue.
Yeah, let me pull that up here.
Okay. So the plan recommendation is to maintain the 35 height limit, but allow for heights up to 40 if the ground floor level is 15 feet. And then you come over to the proposed that talks about retaining the 35-foot maximum height limit, excluding projections, allow 4 stories if ground floor height is at least 15 feet. So we could go back to the planned recommendation rather than the proposed amendment on that. So somebody tell me, the new building that sits at, as you come off the freeway, the new building that's sitting there empty, I think there might be 1 or 2 tenants in it. How many stories is that? 3. So we're talking something taller than that.
Well, we're talking about something with more stories than that. I don't know the height of that building.
Okay. I have a real hard time with that. And I want to bring back, we had somebody called, Kelly Cheney called and talked about the food cart. So I don't think that, I don't know that all of her questions have been answered on that. if it was right now asked to move forward with something, I would say, can we take the 17.18.0603 and leave it at the planned recommendation and remove the food carts until we have a little bit more time to talk about rules and regulations on food carts? That's where I'm at.
All right, thank you. Other counselors, input, questions, comments, reactions? Counselor Huckabee?
Right now, I am at just amending the 15 to 12. I am happy with 4 floors if that's what a builder wants to do. If somebody wants to live on top of a beautiful retail space or office, please do it. We need housing. But I'm fine with moving it to 12. I'm not anti 15, but if we can all decide on 12, then let's do it. And I'm fine with food trucks. Business owners can figure out their rodent problems. I don't think Kelly had a question. It was more of a, hey, by the way, this might be a concern. I didn't hear a question in there. If I'm wrong, please let me know.
Well, I will say too, we are looking in the city for a new code compliance officer.
Yes, we are.
And
Great conversations for that person to have.
health regulations, I don't know if the county oversees that or if it's done at the city level, but anything that's attracting vermin, we want to be sure that we are regulating that appropriately to eliminate that possibility.
And I know we have some great county and state health inspectors. So
Can I add one more thing? We didn't
Sure.
talk about that extension too. Can I clarify something with you, Administrator Betts? The map, looking at the map, that little extended area. So you're saying that the people who live on what would be the south side of Arlington have all been notified that we could possibly be adding them to this?
No,
No.
we made that clear that
Okay.
those properties have not been, and Mr. Southgate recommended only including Mr. Llewellyn's property if we wanted to extend the overlay zone because we have their permission to do so.
I don't like that, but I think it would be, I think we should treat that as a group of properties, all the same.
My thought on that one, when I heard Mr. Welland's testimony, that we would do what we had originally thought of on Portland Avenue is only extend the zone to include those properties that fronted on Arlington Street. He mentioned that his property goes all the way through to Clackamas Boulevard, I think it's called, which is the street that runs along the river. I've always thought of that as a residential area only. It made more sense to me in concept that we would include the properties that face Arlington so that if you are directly across the street from the overlay zone, you're part of the overlay zone. That Arlington Street would have businesses on both sides, but not that it would extend all the way to Clackamas Boulevard. But that was my thought. I know there is a commercial law firm in a what looks like a single family home on the corner that's on the south side of that now. So we do have one business there now, and there are other auto service type businesses, I believe, on the opposite side, on south of Arlington Street, closer to the river. So we do have some residential, some business there now. But the fact that we have not notified them of the possibility that they would be included is somewhat problematic to me tonight.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even have a problem with saying, here's your 90-day notice or 45-day notice that we're going to make this change, and just wait it out and do it right.
And the proposed changes to the C2 zone itself, and these are all still in C2 zone,
right,
may enable some development that's currently not allowed to happen, which would enhance the potential for development of Mr. Llewellyn's property specifically, and some of the others along there. The overlay zone, I would be hesitant to include one property when we are adopting rules that might allow a four-story building, because I wouldn't want one four-story building south of Arlington next door to existing lower buildings. That would be my concern about taking it that way.
Right, I agree.
I'm hearing some support for the suggestion that the height limitation incentive be lowered to 12 feet, which I brought up. I don't know if we want to, I guess we should look at amending individual parts of this first before we take action on the entire document. Would that be the appropriate action, Chad?
Yes, that'd be the appropriate action.
Okay. So if I can find where that is.
Mayor Milch.
Yes.
Heather Austin, 8-47 at the bottom of the page, 17.21.070 subsection.
Okay.
3.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to amend on page 8-47, section 17.21.070, section 1, paragraph B, that the line in the reference to 15 feet in the second line be changed to 12 feet.
So moved.
All right, I saw it moved and I didn't see who did it.
I'll do the second.
Okay.
All right, Councilor Huckabee moved and Councilor Garlington seconded, or was it Councilor Reichel?
Reichel.
Councilor Reichel made the motion, Councilor Garlington seconded that we make that change. Any discussion on that proposed amendment? All right. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the amendment has passed. So now we're looking at a 12-foot ground floor to allow a taller building. Are there any other proposed amendments to what's before us?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to change from 4 stories to 3 stories on 17.21.070 B, changing the stories from 4 to 3.
All right, that's the same paragraph, only in the first line.
I guess I would have to change the not to. Is that 2 changes to go 3 stories and not more than 40? Is that what was in that one page, John?
At one point, that was the original from the 2017 proposed. So to take it back to that actually involved another change too. It was 40 feet, and I think it had a 10-foot minimum on the ground floor. I don't know if you wanted to include that or not.
No, I just wanted 3 and the 35. I
All
would
right.
even go 40. I guess I can't do it like that. Let me think. Four and 40.
Well, that's 4 stories now still.
But it
You were,
brings it down 10 feet. So I'm willing to go 4 and 40. Please. That's my motion. To
all right,
change that verbiage to 4 stories, not to exceed 40 feet.
all right. And did you want to keep the 12?
Oh, I
12
like,
foot?
yeah, the 12. We already voted on that. Yes.
Okay, and let me just do some math here
Oh,
to
yeah.
see. I
know
try to
what you're
sway you a
saying.
little bit.
Yep.
40 minus 12 is 28.
Mhm.
And so the other 3 stories would average just a little over 9 feet. And so structurally, that may not be what you'd want. So
So 4 and 42. John? Planning.
I think you get a sense, John, of where she's going on this. Could you suggest some numbers so that we can put it in the form of a motion and then vote it up or down?
Yeah, of course. So I think, well, 2 things. One is I'm glad you mentioned the connection with that incentive for the ground floor. So that's the first thing to consider. So I think what we should first ask ourselves is, currently the C2 zoning district doesn't have, it talks about height in terms of feet, not floors. So I think maybe the question should be, how many floors are we thinking? And then we can work on the height and feet after that.
All right, so let's get a consensus from council. Are there council members who are content to keep the recommendation of 4 floors?
Yes.
Councilor Huckabee, you said yes?
I sort of like 3.
All right, Councilor Alexander's leaning for 3. Councilor Reichel?
Yes, I can support 4.
All right, Councilor Roberts?
I'm okay with 4, around that 40-foot-ish mark.
Okay,
depending on what we
Councilor
decide.
Garlington?
I would like to go to 3, but
Yeah, and my view is, based on the economic factors I described before, I would say 4. So I don't think there is support on the council for a rule limiting us to 3 stories. I think we're looking at 4 stories. So now, if you want to make reference to a height limit, Councilor Garlington, do you want to look at a reduced height limit?
yes.
If we talked about, we went from 15 down to 12 on the ground floor. What would your thoughts be there?
Well, I am not an engineer, a building engineer. So John, what would I can't see your.
Heather Austin.
Heather, I'm sorry, can't see that far. I need new contacts. What would the building, or what would the ceiling height be on a 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor?
Yeah, so I just thinking about the ranges. So if council's in agreement with the 12-foot ground floor height, and we're adding, 3 stories on top of that, that gives us 42 feet. But there's not much wiggle room in there. And if we're talking about aiming for flexibility, that starts to diminish how much flexibility there is with building design. So the intent, going back to how it's written currently, is currently proposed. The reason there's a floor minimum, floor maximum and a foot maximum is in case one of those is triggered before the other. So in other words, as written, it's 4 stories, not to exceed 50 feet. So that gives the design of that building some flexibility in what the floor heights are. Not to get off track, but I did want to mention the purpose behind that 50-foot maximum that's proposed. It's correct to point out that the downtown plan recommended a 40-foot maximum. Through discussions with Planning Commission, we talked about increasing that to 50 feet in case you do have a use that needs those taller heights, manufacturing, for example. If that's something that takes place that needs taller building heights, that allows for some flexibility. So in other words, the way it's currently proposed, it allows for 4 stories. The likelihood of that type of development, a 4-story building being anywhere between 42 to 48 feet. Again, that's a kind of a range. That's why we came up essentially with that 50-foot maximum, just to have a definite limit, 4 stories, 50 feet. That allows for some flexibility in what those floors on. So that's what we recommended. I would encourage consideration of that. But after that reduction, it starts to be a little bit more of a guessing game into what's likely to take place, and of course, at minimum, what's going to create some conflicts down the road.
Does that make the decision any easier? Are we thinking maybe 48? Providing that upper.
Too, and I'm willing to compromise somewhat, but not much.
Okay.
What about something like 44, 45, and then any past exception has to go before the planning commission?
Yeah, that would be a variance if you wanted to do something beyond that. So you're saying as a compromise, say, put a 45-foot limit in the code.
Mhm.
And then, now if we have a
Specific.
45-foot height limit, can someone apply for a variance? Would our code allow for that?
I believe any dimensional standard is subject to variance, and there are different levels at which it would go to planning commission. There's a 10%, I believe, at staff level. However, anything that comes in as a design review comes to planning commission. So those variance requests or adjustment requests would go with that package. So the planning commission would look at those.
All right, so on the chance that there is a particular type of use, as John Phoenix mentioned, that required a higher height than, let's say, 45 feet, as Councilor Roberts suggested, there would be a provision to be able to examine it and make a decision, an informed decision with community involvement and engagement as to whether we go beyond that.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Tell me this, if somebody built a building and we left it at the 50 feet, and on top of that roof, they decided to put in a garden, a deck, similar objects not used for human occupancy, but a deck on top is not human occupancy, or is it?
I might look to John Phoenix on that one.
Yeah.
I didn't author this language, so.
Yeah, I can clarify that. And I'm not sure if the definition of human occupancy, if I can provide that, but you may be looking at 1721 70A.
Yes.
So essentially those projections would not count towards that maximum height standard. Decks, yeah, decks, it's not specifically written in here, so we could provide, that clarification. But typically that's what you see in a height provision, is something that's not designed for human occupancy. Our deck's part of that. It's open to interpretation, so that could be something that we can clarify in the code as well.
I would assume that a rooftop deck would have some kind of railing around it of a sufficient height that it would provide safety, and that railing would extend up from the edge of the building and be counted in the height. But that's kind of an assumption on my part.
Is it common in these cases to have some sort of setback, John? So if in the case of what Councillor Garlington was talking about with a deck, something like that were to happen that had a railing, a guard around it, is it, I suppose that would take away from the purpose of having a view, most likely. But if someone were to put a pigeon coop on a roof, say, you see that, is there a setback that exists as to not further block the view from Portland Avenue?
There are building setbacks that are proposed, but as far as projections that go beyond that, they would be required to meet that setback. There is another separate section specifically about design of decks and balconies. I don't have the page number. It's 1721 70E, but those aren't really about rooftop additions. Those are wall-mounted decks and balconies coming off of upper stories.
I think it's on page 850, the drawings you have that's showing an effort to have some consistency and the articulation where a taller building on a corner is shown to have sections of it set back a little bit from the part that extends to the sidewalk in order to, just have a form that's a little more aesthetically pleasing. And you'll see that there is, in fact, a roof deck balcony integrated into the structure on item 6 there on the sketch, and a projecting cornice, item 9. So this gives you an example of a building that would have some of those features you've talked about.
But that building is only 3 stories.
In that particular sketch, it is. Yes, you're right.
All sketches we have.
All right,
So I'd like to go back and make a motion.
Okay.
on Building design 17.21.070, paragraph B, to a maximum height of 44.
all right. So replace 50 with 44.
Yes.
Okay. A 10% variance of that would bring it up to 48, if that were ever to come about. But, all right, it's been moved by Councilor Garlington that we amend the height limitation to 44 feet. Is there a second? There is no second, so that motion will not be considered. All right.
I make the motion to make it to 45 feet, like Counselor Robert said.
Okay, there's a motion to change the height limit to 45 feet. Is there a second?
Yes, I second.
All right. It has been moved by Councilor Alexander, seconded by Councilor Roberts, that the height limitation be changed from 50 feet to 45 feet. Any discussion on that?
Just the clarifying question like we were talking about. So there's the 10% that staff can okay, and then anything beyond that has to go before the planning commission, correct?
If I may, the circumstances for granting a adjustment, I'm just looking at the code section. It actually allows a 20% per 17.73.020. So your adjustments are up to 20% rather than 10%, and that's in your current code.
Okay. Well, that will mean that the staff will have to be very aware of the discussion that's taking place tonight to know the feelings from the community and the planning commission and the council about height limits that would be 20% higher than this figure, because that would take it to 54, and that's more than even we had recommended to us in the first place. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adjust the height limit from 50 feet to 45 feet. Any further discussion? Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Huckabee.
No.
Counselor Alexander.
Yes.
Counselor Reichel.
Yes.
Counselor Roberts.
Yes.
Counselor Garlington.
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
No. All right, the motion passes. So we have adjusted the height. Now, are there any other sections of this code where we want to propose amendments? Or I will accept a motion to, and I will refer you to page 8-1 for language on a motion. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the recommendation?
I will make a motion to approve the proposed amendments, GMC chapter 17.08 and 17.78, and addition of new chapter 17.21 downtown core overlay district with additional amendments.
I will second.
All right, it's moved and seconded that we accept staff's recommendation to adopt these amendments or these code changes as amended tonight. Moved by Councilor Huckabee, seconded by Councilor Roberts. Any additional discussion?
I have one question.
Councilor Garlington.
Talk to me about the two properties that John had identified on the map that are not in the downtown corridor. Will the council and or the city be moving forward with changing the nature park out of this C2 thing? And what about that other property on the backside?
For clarification here, you're referring back to the original map that had the circles on it that showed the properties zoned C2 throughout the city.
Correct.
The C2 zoning changes would affect all C2 properties. However, I know there has been some internal discussion about changing the zoning of the nature park to an open space zoning. So even if we make changes here, I don't think we're likely to, that's not going to have any impact on what happens at the nature park or at the YMCA childcare facility.
Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I also want to clarify one last thing. Did we properly address the Llewellyn matter?
We did not take action. We discussed it, I think, pretty thoroughly. And there was a concern over, well, I'll express contacting other people, that was not done. And that moving one property into it, depending on what use that might have, might also not be as good as having a straight boundary around it. So we did not take action to make that particular change. It does not preclude us from examining that more thoroughly and involving the community engagement and then making that change in the future. I think this is all something that can be incrementally enlarged, but the goal now is to begin getting those attractive destination type properties in process, and then they'll be beating down the doors to do it in bigger areas.
Very good.
All right, those questions have been answered. The motion is to accept the text amendments as amended tonight. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for being here tonight for this portion of it and for the input that was very helpful. We do have other items on the agenda, but that was our big one. And I want to thank especially the members of the Planning Commission who worked on this for a number of years. And I'll just say my first involvement in this city as an appointed official was to be on I was appointed in July of 2016 to the Downtown Revitalization Committee. I worked through that. I attended all the meetings of the Housing Needs Analysis Committee over the years, joined Planning Commission. I've seen this through from at least one beginning to an end, and I'm pleased that it's gone the direction it has. And I am grateful for the council for providing some flexibility and yet, sticking to your guns as far as some changes you wanted to see. So that's the way this thing ought to happen. The next item on our agenda, the 2022 City of Gladstone Annual Report. I call on Administrator Betts.
May I ask if we have a 5-minute break, please?
Yes, that's a good idea. We will take a 5-minute recess and come back at 9 o'clock.
You know what I'm talking about?
All right, I call an end to the recess and call us back to order. We are on item 9 of the agenda. Annual report from our city administrator, Jackie Betts.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. At our City Council goal setting session, we went through the state of the cities and highlighted projects and achievements from 2022. This is in your packet tonight, just to show it to you and the public. First, it will go in the utility bills in April, so all of the households will get a copy of it, but really just kind of wanted to highlight our successes in 2022.
Any comments from counselors?
I was just telling I was saying to Mayor Milch, this is just a fabulous piece. And thank you so much for putting it together. I think everyone that reads it will, have something in there that they nod their head to and can identify with. And it's super informative, but like I said, a real easy read. So great job. I mean, I know you don't need that because you always do everything so wonderful, but I was just really impressed with this piece. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree completely with Mindy, and I think you do need it. We appreciate you so much for how hard you work for us all the time. So sincere thank you, and it is beautifully done. Good job.
Jackie, I'm imagining you had some help from staff in photographs and other things. And
We did. It was a collective effort with the management team. And one of our city council goals is to improve communication with the public. And so this is the start to doing that.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Do we need to take action to accept it, or this is just informational to us, I guess?
Just informational.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes what had been our original agenda. We have one other item, which is to conduct an interview with a candidate for a vacant city council position number 4. Sierra Cook is here tonight. The procedure we followed on filling the vacancy was to advertise the vacancy for the position, give people opportunity to apply. We had a total of 4 people who applied originally, and 2 of the 4 withdrew their applications at some point. It was a feeling last month, not voiced outright, but the last time we did interviews, there was a sense that perhaps people who might otherwise have chosen to apply may have withheld their applications based on knowing of some of those who did apply. And then when people withdrew, sometimes after the deadline to apply had passed, it didn't seem appropriate to end things at that point. So we have one additional applicant whom we will interview tonight. We will not make a decision tonight or do an appointment. This is an interview only, and our intention is to take action on this item or to make the appointment at the beginning of our March 28th meeting, 2 weeks from tonight. That is a work session. That'll be the only, so far, the only business item on that. Sierra Cook, will you come forward, please?
May I ask a question, Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to confirm that we are sticking to these questions with simple follow-up questions if needed.
That's correct. We will do this the same way we did the last time. Each counselor will be responsible for one question. They were placed on your seat at the dais today. Does everyone have them in front of them? I want to be sure.
Yes.
I do
Okay.
not have a copy.
That was emailed to you.
Do you happen to, because I was just looking for it.
Councilor Michael, would you mind if I just asked your question tonight to make
I
so
am
that you
fine
wouldn't
with
have to
that.
search through? Okay, all right.
Thank you so much. I'm
I
sorry.
will try to give it the same, expression that you would.
Thank you. Why, thank you.
All right. We have read the applicant's application that included a number of quick questions about personal interests and qualifications, but we have these additional questions we'd like to ask. And I'll start with the first one. Welcome. A city thrives on the participation of its citizens. What role do elected officials play in mobilizing civic involvement and encouraging citizens to voice their concerns, vote in local elections, and volunteer in their community?
Thank you for the question. If I may introduce myself first, my name is Sierra Cook. My pronouns are they, them, but she is also acceptable. To answer your question, I was really excited to see that in the goal setting session that this council had for the 2023 to 2025 term, that you guys listed communication and engagement as one of your goals. I think that was a well-identified goal because I think that community involvement is essential to a thriving and effective city government. I think the role of the elected official or appointed official in this case would be to, disseminate information to identified stakeholders in any decision, listen to that feedback, and when appropriate, action on that feedback. I think that there is an opportunity in the city of Gladstone to be more active with that, which I'm so excited. I already see the progress happening, particularly with social media. I'm a very social media person, so I definitely see the city engaging more there. I think a good example of this was the Meldrum Bar Park fees. When that was instituted, gosh, a year or so ago, time has no meaning since COVID. But when those were instituted, I really felt like that had been well communicated. I'm at most city council meetings. It was on the agenda. It was talked about for quite a while before that was voted on. But then when that came to fruition and there were fees at the Meldrum Bar Park for parking, there were a lot of community members who felt like they hadn't had an opportunity to participate in that decision, or who were just surprised by that decision. And I think what I learned from that situation was, hey, even though we feel, we being like the people who are plugged into Gladstone and watch city meetings, even though people who are showing up at council meetings and to city business have a pulse on what's going on, that is a very small segment of the Gladstone community as a whole. And I think that there's work to do to be thoughtful about who the key stakeholders are whenever a decision is being made and proactively reaching out to them to involve them in that decision-making process.
Thank you. Councillor Huckabee, you have a question.
What have you done to educate yourself of the issues facing the city of Gladstone? Have you prepared yourself to assume the duties of a city councillor?
Yes. So I think probably the best education that I would bring to this would be my experience on the audit and budget committees, which I've been a part of since 2021. And then also attending city council meetings. I'm a bit of a nerd. Not many people have a fun hobby of attending city council meetings and being on top of city business. But it is an interest of mine, and I have attended most city council meetings since summer of 2020. And so I feel like I have a fair background of the issues facing the city and what has come up in the city in the last few years. I think if appointed, I think further steps I would take would be to rewatch the city council work session on utilities, because that's an area of knowledge that I would need greater depth of knowledge in. And I know that we just had a session on utilities education, so I would go back and rewatch that meeting, as well as the ethics volunteer orientation, which I took back in 2021 when I first started on the audit and budget committees. But I would want to rewatch and relearn that information if I were in a new role, because I think I would be watching it with a new set of eyes. I would also reach out to City Administrator Betts, because I know she has a lot of wonderful information about how to educate yourself with civic involvement.
All right, thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Okay, hi. Gladstone has various boards under the city council: library, parks, planning, senior center, and traffic safety. Additionally, there are regional commitments: C4 West, North Clackamas County Water Commission, Clackamas County Research Justice Study School Board. As a member of the council, you will be asked to be a liaison to one or more of them. Which of these can you see yourself getting involved with and how?
I would be happy to support in any of those areas of responsibility. I think, to be frank, like this is for a 9-month period of time. It's a very short term. I think that when you're partnering, especially with different agencies, different intergovernmental relationships, the success of those partnerships is based on relationship. And I think I'm a great relationship builder, but in 9 months, I don't know how much of a great relationship building I could do within that short period of time. So I think it might make the most sense for me to contribute in an area where I'm already most familiar, like audit or budget, and maybe take some workload off of someone else so that they could build more of a long-term partnership, particularly in those areas where there's interagency or multi-jurisdictional areas.
The next question is the one that Councillor Reichel was to read, and I will read it for her. Explain what you believe makes Gladstone special or unique in a positive way, and how would you propose to preserve, protect, and enhance those qualities? Give an example of how you have worked collaboratively on a project or issue in Gladstone.
Yes. So one of the things that I love about Gladstone, I wasn't born here. I didn't go to high school here. Like, I am a newer resident of Gladstone as of 2019. And I was drawn here because of the small community feel and the tight-knit community that's here in Gladstone. What I have learned in my time here in Gladstone is that, in a larger city, you can really live within a subgroup, right? Like you can have an interest or a population that you belong to, and you can just live within that subgroup and live your entire life just working with people who are like you. What's special about Gladstone is it's a small enough community where you have to work with people who are different than you. It's not a big enough community where we get to pick and choose the businesses that we support. We don't get to pick and choose, the school projects that we support. Like we are all one community, and there's one thing I love about being here is that if you are in Gladstone, there is a community that is there to support you and uplift whatever project you're doing. The support of small businesses, I think, is amazing. So in short, the small community feel, I think the way that I would help enhance that would be to support with one of the council goals of communication and engagement. I think by, my experience as a store manager of a large grocery store, I've had up to, more than 100 employees, either directly or indirectly reporting to me. And one way that you lead a large group of people is by frequent, transparent communication where you actually take their feedback into account. So you listen, but then you also take action as a second step. So that's how I would support and continue that small town community feel.
Thank you.
May I ask a
Councilor
follow-up?
Roberts.
May I ask a follow-up to that?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a particular project or issue that you have worked on in Gladstone that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I created a website called happyrockfamilies.com. That's Happy Rock Families. No, I'm just teasing. So created a website, Happy Rock Families, because I really wanted to promote Gladstone to the greater Portland area. I've worked in Portland. Most of my coworkers and the people that I just work with in my day job don't know anything about Gladstone. And, when I talk about where I live, I think there was a lot of misunderstandings about Gladstone. I got a lot of like, oh, that place behind the car dealerships. I'm like, no, there's a wonderful community there. Please drive past the car dealerships. And I really built that website with the intention of, calling out what a wonderful place Gladstone is to live, specifically from my perspective as a parent of young children.
All right, Councilor Roberts.
How would you strengthen the city's working relationship with the county, the state, metro, and other tax districts on multi-jurisdictional issues like affordable housing, transportation, social services, and the economy?
This is going to sound like a cop-out, but I promise that it's not. Like I spoke to earlier, this position that you guys are considering an appointment to is a 9-month term. I don't think it's realistic to stay, I'm going to build a relationship with Metro and be able to provide results and positive results within a 9-month period of time. I don't know that that's possible. I think what I can do is I can focus, kind of divide and conquer. Like if there are areas of the city's business that is limited to Gladstone, I think that is where I could probably most positively contribute. I think that generally speaking, if I were to look at this as a longer term, like if I were to run in November, which I'm undecided if that's would be in my future or not, my answer would be that everything is based on relationship and open and honest communication. And I think that at times Gladstone has had an adversarial relationship with some of our partners within the regional government. And I think that there is an opportunity at this point to intentionally change the tone and hopefully change the outcome.
Thank you.
I'm next. How would you deal with competing requests or demands from various groups for city resources such as budget and staff time?
This is like tale as old as time, right? Like we don't have unlimited money. We don't have unlimited time. I came across this as a store manager for a grocery store. Whenever you have greater demand than you have supply for, you have greater demand for resources than you can provide, you have to prioritize and you have to intentionally prioritize or someone's going to do it for you. So I would really refer to, I think I think the city did a great job. I think the council did a great job in coming up with your city council goals for 23 through 25 of economic development, infrastructure, parks, communication, and engagement. I think those were excellent priorities that the city council set. So I think that whenever the council is faced with determining where resources go to, be they time or capital, I think they should go in service to those goals. Of those goals, I think the most pressing is infrastructure, because I think it directly relates to our ability to stay solvent. I think our DEQ violations are something that should really be prioritized within that set of priorities and goals that the city council has set aside.
Thank you.
Sierra, in closing, is there anything else you'd like us to know about you?
I think you guys had awesome questions. I thought your application was very thorough. I feel like I've presented the information that I want to present. I think just in closing, oh, I know. One question that I expected you to ask that you did not was why I didn't apply the first time. And so I just wanted to proactively address that in case that is on anyone's minds. When this appointment or the application for this appointment was first opened, Mayor Milch, you spoke to there being 4 initial candidates. You know, they're one of those candidates, one of the first candidates to apply was a former city councilor who I think did a fantastic job and had the knowledge and skills to really move the city forward. I was very excited that this person had applied. Unfortunately, that candidate had to withdraw their application, and that was done after the application period had closed. So, you know, I heard from my neighbors. I had people stop me in the grocery store and encourage me to apply for this position. And I would have done so the first time around if there hadn't been a candidate that I thought just had head and shoulders more experience above where I'm at. But other than that, I really in preparing for this interview, I've really gone through the city council agenda, the meeting minutes, the goal setting session that you guys did in January. And I just, as a citizen, I'm so pleased and impressed and excited about the future with this council. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And yeah, regardless of the decision that you make with this appointment, I think there's a really bright and exciting future for the city of Gladstone.
All right. Thank you, Sierra, for coming tonight. Thank you, Trevor and Maria, for being here tonight. As I said earlier, we'll not make a decision on this tonight. Hold on to all your notes from all the interviews we have. The decision will be made at our next meeting. And we will hope that the person appointed that night will be able to join us for the work session scheduled for March 28th. So that concludes our regular agenda. Jackie, is there any business carried forward that we should deal with this evening?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other business from the audience?
We have one that has signed up, and that's Jerry Blakeney.
Mr. Blakeney, come forward, please.
I'll make it quick, so you don't even have to put the timer up, Cami. I wanted to thank the city council and staff for instituting this rule, or more importantly, getting rid of the old rule where we had to sign up at noon the day of. I think that enabling it or making it easier for your constituents to speak to you all is really important. I would urge you all to maybe consider moving it to the beginning of that meeting, because meetings like this are very hard for some people to sit through. Don't worry, I'll still be here. So if you keep it at the end, I'll be here. Second of all, and again, I'll keep this short. My buddy Greg Alexander and I, Councilor Alexander and I, had a discussion 5-6 months ago out in the parking lot about volunteerism in this community. Now, as it's been clearly established, I live 2 doors away from the Gladstone city line, so I won't be volunteering for any Gladstone committees or boards or commissions today. However, one of the things that we did discuss, and I'm not saying that he said yes or no, but we discussed it, was possibly opening up commission and boards, maybe certain ones, not all, to outside people, maybe living within a mile distance of Gladstone or 5 miles. 42, 45, I'm not sure, whichever fits you all. And therefore you can open a new volunteer base that you currently do not have. Obviously, I wouldn't ask to sit on the city council, so that would stay locked down. But by opening up some boards and commissions, you may be able to tap into a different base. I know myself, I would sign up. And I know of another person who lives right across the street from the Gladstone city line who wanted to sign up as well. So that's two people that you could get. And since Gladstone has had a hard time getting volunteers in the past, that might help that problem. But otherwise, I think you all have done a really good job of moving the council forward from where it was. And I just wanted to give you all the rare praise from myself for a job well done. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for coming tonight. And we'll take that under advisement as we do all input from citizens. We're grateful for it. Bob Everett was here earlier. He had another commitment, had to leave early, but he did want me to ask me if I would remind you of the community bingo night. This coming Friday is the night at the senior center when that is happening. I believe the group benefiting this week is the 8th grade graduating class at Cracksburger. This will help them with a year-end party. So it's a fundraiser. It's a social event. There's food and beverage, so of a variety of kinds. And so just lift that up to you.
Wear your green.
Wear your green. It is St. Patrick's Day. That's right.
What time is that at? Is it their doors?
It is
are
from
at
5:30 to 8 p.m.
Ticket sales, or not ticket sales, but people start entering at 4:30 and there's typically a line. So if you want to get in, I would say be there at 4:25.
Very good
Okay.
observation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Huckabee, business from the council.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be really quick because I know it's late.
Is your mic on?
Microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna try to be really quick because I know it's really late. So let's see. Got that taken care of. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to Detective Fitch for this phenomenal report on the Des Moines, Iowa incident, Gladstone incident. Chief Schmerber, excellent job. Excellent job. Like, I really hope that everybody takes the time to read this report. It is valuable information and it is a great reminder to open up these discussions with your kids. There's predators online, so make sure everybody is aware of that, so they don't fall victim to it. Okay, let's see. Congratulations on rolling out the body cameras, Chief Schmerber. I know that many in our community are super excited about it. I hear the officers are as well.
Yes, they are.
It's huge. To lots of us, it's huge. So kudos to that. Let's see. I was reading on Sergeant Hutchinson's report on 6-15. On February 5th, there was an overdose at Tukwila Springs. It states that Narcan had to be administered along with CPR. The patient was transported by AMR. So my question was Narcan on site or the police department or AMR?
So Narcan was on site. So this was a visitor to the facility.
Okay.
Okay, so it wasn't the resident itself. Narcan was on site. Well, by the time we arrived, Narcan had been administered on 3 different occasions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when we got there, we're getting ready to do it, administer the Narcan, but it had already been done. So CPR was attempted and refused. The person was conscious,
Oh, okay.
came to conscious, and then was transported. So
Okay. Thank
I
you.
am actually meeting with, I don't know where the Narcan came from. I know that Narcan is readily available to community members out there. I know that Clackamas County Health actually hands it out and gives it out to people.
Yeah.
So, but I do have a meeting on the 22nd with Tukwila. It's going to be an in-person meeting for the first time in a while. And so we'll broach that subject on how they go about doing that.
Okay. And like whether they actually had it or somebody.
That's correct. So we don't know whether
Right.
individuals had it or Tukwila.
Right. Well, I'm glad nonetheless it was on site because it's life-saving. Okay, you're having that discussion, so I'll just ask for a follow-up on that once they tell you. Thanks for the reminder on the free bike helmet program. That is excellent. We've had some unfortunate incidents in Gladstone recently, and it is a great reminder that everybody should be wearing bikes, especially children. Kudos for pushing out the radar data. I'm so happy to see this. We all see the radar on streets all the time. We're like, oh, what's it doing? Some people thinks it takes pictures. So to have the data in here is really great. So we have facts. So when people ask questions, we have facts to answer. There was one statement I saw on social media and I wanted to ask you about it. They inferred that the 2 snow days drastically skewed our numbers on that. I don't think that's factual, but I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I don't believe it's factual at all when you, especially when you're taking 30 days, take 2 days out of 30.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you for that. Huge shout out to Public Works. All of these pictures in their monthly report are great. We hear a lot of the time that people don't see what their money is going to for taxes, kind of what Public Works is doing with that money. And here's all the photo evidence. So great, great, great seeing that. I have more. I'll get there. Going super fast. Okay, let's see. This was it. I just wanted to say thank you to the Senior Center and FOGNAP for bingo in February. If you guys didn't attend, it was great fun. There was 2 $100 winners, which are blackouts, by the way. So there's 2 blackout winners, and instead of splitting it, they actually both got $100 a piece. So that was cool. The food is phenomenal. I will say for going to a bingo night, you don't expect like superb burgers. They were amazing. They were really good. So again, I'm going to do a little push out for this coming Friday. It is 8th grade graduation. Who is going to benefit from that? And I think this one's going to be, they're all highly attended. I think there's going to be a lot of people at the door for this. So it's great to see everybody there. And yes, wear your green. I just also wanted to point out real quick that the Senior Center has issued a survey. It's one question that is asking for new name suggestions for our center. It might be not fully known that there's new plans for the center. And this will be a great way to capture a new name that represents the multi-generational plans for the center. So I urge everybody to make those suggestions. And I did want to give out a shout out to Mindy Prosky, who made the pamphlet with all of the questions and answers, as well as the survey link. It was beautiful. And she put a lot of time into that. So I think that's it. Thank you. That was really fast. I'm sorry.
Counselor Alexander.
Well, as you can see, you took my detective pitch. Thank you.
I mean,
And
kudos
the
to
body
Detective
cam, thank
Pitch.
you.
Like,
I know, that's what I was gonna do too. And I also,
She asked to go first. She stole it from you.
I know, but that's all right. I agree with all that. And then I also just went one more where I'm glad to see that new truck we got, Nanook. And, we've helped Clackamas County Sheriff. We helped Sandy, we helped Wilsonville. So we're getting our money's worth out of that K-9, I think. So that's great.
yes, we are. In fact, tonight's the first night it actually rolled out on the street. So
It's awesome. But I mean,
Excellent.
we've already helped. We've been helping everybody with it forever. So now the truck's out there. It's going to make it a lot nicer for the dog.
Counselor Reichel.
Yes, so I would just like to share, last night I attended the Parks and Rec board meeting. I'm gonna try and make this quick because I think my iPad might die. But just kind of an overview. It was a very productive meeting. A lot of good stuff was discussed. They are looking at continuing the process of getting the grant for the pavement project up at the nature park. Also, they talked about how we are going to go about the process of updating and replacing things like our garbage cans at the parks and benches and picnic tables, and kind of going through like a rotation of getting all of that updated through the time. And they also had further discussion about the Robin Hood improvement that they're doing. And it sounds like Darren has really good ideas of the numbers of what they're looking at as far as costs. So they were there's solid plans going forward for a lot of the maintenance and updating that we are looking to do. And that's pretty much all I've got for you.
Thank you. Counselor Roberts.
I just wanted to compound what Councilors Huckabee and Alexander already said about the Police Department monthly report, the great detective work by Detective Fitch, the body cams, and the new truck for Nanook. Those were all very exciting to read and see the pictures of the new truck. That's very cool. Hope to see that out on the road soon. 2 weeks ago, I think, I had the opportunity to meet with the North Clackamas County Water Commission Director, Wade Hathorn. We had a good about hour and a half meeting where I got a tour of the facility, met with him. So I'm excited to begin and assume my duties on the 23rd for our first meeting. So.
Councilor Garland.
So I have a few things. The Oak Lodge Library design presentation will be a Zoom meeting on Tuesday, March 21st at 5:30. If you're interested, go onto the Clackamas County website. You can find the link. It'll probably another PowerPoint presentation, but it should be pretty good and hopefully give some insight as to where they're headed. I just want to continuously thank our administrator for pushing us forward as far as we are with our library. So we're really excited about that. And our Clackamas County Library Board meeting is Thursday, March 16th. That too is on Zoom at 5:30. I know that some of you have heard this, but Administrator Betts, Counselor Alexander, and myself had our meeting with Clackamas Fire. The fire station remodel is still progressing, and once the internal components are complete, the city fire district will hold an open house for the public, hopefully mid-May. We discussed the Clackamas enhanced levy measure, which will not affect Gladstone residents as we will not be voting on the levy. Just as a reminder, we have our own. We look forward to seeing Clackamas Fire at the community Easter egg hunt, the 4th of July barbecue, Max Patterson Park, and the community festival in August. The Friends of Gladstone Nature Park volunteer Saturday is March 25th, 9 to 12. Gloves, donuts, and smiling faces are provided. Please come. You will meet and work with some great neighbors. The plant sale at the Nature Park is Sunday, April 22nd, and it will include the robotics people. So this is a great time to clean out your garage and get rid of those electronics. They do not belong in your garbage can. Bring them to be recycled, please. I have emailed those that were interested in helping with the Tukwila Springs dinner. If you're still interested and for whatever reason have not heard from me, please reach out. I can give you my phone number tonight, or just email me. The Gladstone School District spring vacation is March 27th to the 31st. I want to make sure everybody remembers to watch out for the kids. There'll be a lot of them out in the streets and we need to slow down and pay attention. The Gladstone is holding its annual Easter egg hunt on Saturday, April 8th at 11 a.m. Do come early for the pancake breakfast. And I want to remind everyone, it's faster than a hungry crowd at Thanksgiving. It's faster than a ball team with an ice cream cone at Baskin and Robbins. This event takes less than 1 minute. Do not be late. Giving at the Gladstone Food Bank is super easy. Just ask the Gladstone Pickleball Club. Our Gladstone Pickleball Club board members, Jeannie, Mike Ellis, Bill Preble, and Connie Minto recently presented the food bank a check for $1,350 and donated 200 pounds of food to our food bank. Every contribution is needed, so please consider donating. And I'd also like to wish you all a very blessed Easter season. That's all.
Mindy, I have a quick question. When is your next dinner at Tukwila scheduled?
Well, I have one scheduled for this month, and it's going to be a learning event with Key Club members. But then I have one this is March, I have another one in April. So I have one in April and then one in June as well. The Rotary is going to help out in June with an event. So contact me with that for that April date, because I think that it's far enough out that you might be able to save the date for that.
I'm actually asking for a friend.
Oh, okay. I'll email it to you when I get home.
Okay, sounds
Okay,
good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well, we've heard from a variety of people tonight talking about local engagement and volunteers and connections and partnerships and the importance of all those. I want to share a few things. Last Friday, I think it was Dr. Seuss's birthday, the day we have Everybody Reads at the elementary school, and I participated in that. Read books about local governance, in fact, to 5 different classes ranging from first graders on up through 5th graders. Got wonderful response. It's great that we are growing a generation of young people who think about the importance of civic involvement and what it means. And one of the great things I was able to do that day was to announce that as a result of a work session we'd had with the Parks Board, that we were seriously thinking about replacing some recreational equipment at Meldrum Bar Park. And I got a round of applause from children for that comment. So it's nice to get that feedback. I've heard from a number of people in the community, a FOGNAP board member, a school teacher, a high school student, about the importance of trees in our environment. And I had a conversation with Greg Geist, the Director of Water Environmental Services, because their surface water management program has a lot to do with street trees and other trees that help absorb rainwater and keep it from getting into stormwater systems. You may have read that Portland had a long-time relationship with an organization called Friends of Trees that helped people plant trees in their parkways and help provide that tree canopy to its community. And for whatever reason, they kind of ended that relationship. And I sure hope that Clackamas County and the cities in this county will pick up on that and take advantage, and that we can do more with trees here in Gladstone. They have the effect on some streets of calming traffic, on some streets of just creating an inviting environment. And I hope we'll take a look at that in the future. Let's see, those were 2 things. As your mayor, I've been involved in a group called the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium. Thanks to this council approving at one of our recent meetings, our rejoining that group. This year, there's a lot going on with mayors trying to influence legislation across the state, particularly in this area, around the issue of tolling. I have a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning with mayors of several of the urban cities here in Clackamas County. We're hoping that elected officials can help sway how the legislature goes on that matter. But I encourage all of you to read the environmental assessment that ODOT produced on this topic. Draw your own conclusions about it, but to weigh in on how potentially harmful it could be for this community and several of the communities around us. We already see people cutting through Gladstone whenever there's a fender bender on the 205. And while we certainly support the idea of eliminating the bottlenecks in this region, none of us are real sure whether tolling is the way to do that. And we're not sure that ODOT has made a good case for that either. So I appreciate this council having looked at that issue in the past. Our staff is weighing in when asked to do so on this, and I will keep you posted on that. That's all I have for tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded by Councilors Huckabee and Alexander. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Reichel,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Huckabee,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, and after a couple of meetings that we stayed pretty much under our limit, I thank you for your tolerating a slightly longer meeting tonight. We are adjourned at 9:40 p.m.